That I don't recall. The actual time was a little bit of a blur.
You had another officer with you at that time, is that correct?
That's correct.
And as a result of catching that blur, what did you do and where did you go?
Pull the side of the road, turn back around. There's two entrances off of Lisbon Street and into that parking lot. Pulled into the first one just far enough into that first driveway to get an unobstructed view of the vehicle. And at that point, we called back to dispatch, and reinforcements were dispatched to that area. So
Which dispatch did you call back to?
our Lisbon dispatch.
And could you describe for the commission, please, the distance between where your police vehicle pulled in to the vehicle that you identified as Mr. Carr's?
I would say approximately 100 feet. We pulled into that first driveway and never entered into the main body of the parking lot. We pulled in just far enough to get past the fence, past the bushes, so we could clearly see the vehicle. Exited the vehicle, covered that. My partner covered the vehicle. I covered the river line while reinforcements were on their way.
Did you ever approach the vehicle itself?
We did not. And I never saw anyone approach that vehicle while we were there.
And when you said you covered the vehicle, what do you mean by that?
Lethal cover. Obviously, we're dealing with an armed subject, so my partner covered the vehicle, like I said, just in case there was someone in there. And I covered the river line just to try to give him some security.
Did you illuminate that vehicle with any extra lighting from your police vehicle at that time?
Yes, we do have a large LED spotlight mounted on the vehicles.
Okay, and which side of your car is that on?
Passenger side. I'm sorry, driver's side.
Once you illuminated the vehicle, did you see anybody or anything inside?
We did not.
Did you see any movement from the vehicle?
We did not.
And at that point, were the car doors open or closed?
They were closed. From what we could see on the driver's side, they were closed.
So the driver's side was closed, is that right?
Yeah.
Once you called it in, who do you remember arriving next?
I believe it was Chief McGhee that arrived first on scene. He covered the other entrance into that parking lot.
Was anybody with Chief McGhee?
That I don't know.
Did he illuminate the vehicle?
I'm not sure of that either.
And did anyone, did Chief McGhee or anybody else go up to the vehicle at that time?
They did not.
They did not?
They did not.
During that time, as other officers were responding, did you see any movement in and around the vehicle or down the pathway on either side?
I did not.
How long were you there for?
We assumed that initial position until the extra unit showed up. We backed out, held the perimeter. We were there. I'm going to guess 20 to 30 minutes until state police arrived and were able to take over command of the scene.
And when you say you backed off and held the perimeter, describe what you mean by that, please.
Giving more room. I left my position at the cruiser, went to an outer position, trying to cover any other vantage points where there may be an opening in that perimeter.
And at the time you were doing this, was your vehicle running or turned off?
Vehicle was still running.
They were still running. And when Chief McGhee's car came, did he leave his vehicle running as well?
I can't speak to that. I don't know.
How many law enforcement vehicles do you think responded to the scene after you folks called it in?
Numerous. I couldn't even dare guess what the number would be, but there were numerous cars there.
And did they have their blue lights going?
Yes.
During that time, did you see anybody until the state police TAC team got there? Did you see anybody approach the car?
I did not.
Did you see the New Hampshire State Police helicopter come?
Yes.
And did you hear any conversations between the law enforcement officers on the ground and the New Hampshire State Police helicopters? Radio traffic?
Some, yes.
Could you give us a general idea of what the radio traffic was like?
We were obviously scanning multiple channels. There was a lot of radio traffic. A lot of it was any particular areas they needed and if they were going back for refueling.
And when you say any particular areas, what do you mean by that?
Areas of interest. If we were getting calls where extra resources might be needed, obviously we want eyes overhead, so they would radio back to them.
Okay. At some point, the Maine State Police TAC team arrived,
Yes.
and what happened then?
Through the network, we received information that they wanted other agencies out of the area. So as they assumed positions on the perimeter, we backed out and left the area, continued patrolling, covered other areas of town just to try to assist and broaden that perimeter a little bit.
Are you able to tell us how many members of the Maine State Police TAC team you saw pull up and start assuming the perimeter, as you call it?
I'm not sure. There were several vehicles, and I'm assuming several members per vehicle, but I couldn't give you an amount.
Excuse me, and how large a perimeter did you see established in and around that vehicle that evening?
Initially, we were where I was posted once I'd backed away from my cruiser. It was back up by the road, pretty much surrounding the parking lot.
Can you describe the parking lot for us, please? How big was it? How wide was it? Any markings?
There's like I said, there's two entrances off of Frost Hill, which is the road directly off of Lisbon Street. Driveways are probably between 100 and 150 feet apart. And it obviously goes down to the riverside, access to the trailhead. Total parking lot from road to second entrance, 150 to 200 feet. It's kind of oblong in shape.
All right, and then you said there's distance from where the car was parked down to the trail and the riverfront, is that correct?
That's correct. It was parked at the rear of the parking lot near the trailhead. There's access to the trailhead, which heads in one direction and actually in an opposite direction as well, so.
And how far is it from the end of the parking lot to where the trailhead, if one was walking to get onto the trailhead?
The exposed trailhead would be, I mean, it was right there, 15 feet, 20 feet,
How wide is the trail?
10 feet, 8 feet, it's a walking path.
All right, and then beyond the trail, the far edge of the trail, what is there? What do you see?
I guess I'm not sure.
Okay, so you've said there's the parking lot.
Mhm.
Then right off of that is the trailhead.
Right.
On this side of the trailhead,
So
what do you see?
So in one direction, the trail heads obviously in one direction, and then there's from that lot, you can access the second half of the trail, which heads in the opposite direction, which isn't immediately exposed. There's a grassy area and some trees there.
And then the river?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see any activity on the river in that area that evening?
No.
No. Once you backed away, and you proceeded to go back onto patrol, where did you go and what did you do?
We went where needed. Obviously, there were still complaints and calls for service coming in that we needed to investigate. Everybody in town was on high alert, so anything that seemed out of the ordinary was getting called in, and we were just trying to get everywhere we needed to be as quick as we could, just to make sure that the townspeople knew that we were there, and obviously to make sure that that it wasn't something that would be related to what we were looking into.
Do you remember how many members of the Lisbon Police Department were on duty or at the scene at that time?
At the parking lot?
Yes.
That I don't know.
And did you have any interaction with the K-9 officer from the Thompson Police at that time?
I did not.
Did you know that that individual was present at the scene at that time?
Honestly, I heard the dog, so I knew there was a K-9 there, but I didn't know which one it was until I was told afterwards.
Okay. On that evening, the evening of October 25th, did you have any occasion to go to the main recycling facility on Capitol Avenue?
I don't think I was at the site that night.
All right. Were you aware of any connection between Mr. Card and main recycling that evening?
Yes, that information had been relayed.
How was that information relayed?
I don't remember if it was cell or via radio. I don't remember.
I might just say, I'm not faulting you, but if people have their notes and want to refer to them, it's perfectly all
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
All right, I should have offered that. No.
Nope, that's all right. It's okay.
So you said the information and the connection between Mr. Card and the main recycling was relayed in some manner to law enforcement that evening. Do you know if or did you relay any of this information to members of the Maine State Police TAC team?
I did not have any direct line of communication to the Maine State Police TAC team.
Okay. And do you recall if there was any statewide car-to-car communications of that information?
I can't speak to that. I don't know if there was.
On that evening, is it correct to say you did not go to the main recycling facility at all that evening?
I was there at some point, but that initial response, I was not there.
Tell me what you did when you did respond to main recycling.
That was, once that became a concentrated place of interest, it was holding an outer perimeter just to limit traffic. I believe at that point they had contacted management and made sure that the business was closed, that employees weren't going to show up, and we were just maintaining a scene security type of approach.
Okay. Moving forward to October 27th, 2023, did you have an occasion to return to main recycling as a result of a report that was received or some observations made by other officers?
Yes, we did go back.
And would you describe for us, please, what you did?
Again, scene security at that point, additional resources have been called in, and we just maintained scene security. I think I was on the back side of the adjacent lot for main recycling on the extended part of the trail.
Okay. I'm gonna just show you a basic map of the area, and I'm gonna ask you to mark your initials on the area where you said you were on the back side of the lot.
Sure.
Sergeant, the area where you have marked your initials and M, would you consider that the overflow lot of main recycling?
Yes, there's an area where the trail and the tracks intersect, and it comes very close to that overflow lot. Was where I was posted that night.
So you were posted that evening. Did you see any movement around that particular area at all?
No.
And what was your reason in being posted there that evening on the 27th?
That was, we had received report that Mr. Carter had been found, and like I said, additional resources were there, and we were just posing as scene security, making sure there was no additional traffic through there.
So between the evening of the 25th, when Mr. Carter's car was found, and until you received the assignment to be posted for additional scene security once he had been found, did you have any occasions to go into that overflow lot before he was found?
I was never down. I was not in that lot during that time.
You were not?
No.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further with this witness.
If I could ask some follow-ups, just for orientation for me. The boat launch area, are boats launched into the Androscoggin or into a tributary?
It's the Sabattis River just before where it meets the Androscoggin.
Okay, so they're launched into the Sabattis River, not into the Androscoggin.
It's within a couple hundred feet, but there's
Very
the
close.
direct intersection.
And is the lot marked out with lanes and parking areas?
There are marked parking areas, yes.
And when you first spotted the vehicle, was it parked in a way that would be consistent with parked in one of those laned parking spaces, or was it sort of out of position?
It was parked on the last parking spot in facing the river, slightly canted inside that parking area.
And do you recall right now which of you first spotted the car? Was it you?
It was me.
It was you.
That was on my side of the road, and I was the one that picked
Okay.
up the glimpse.
And just so we're all clear about one thing, Lisbon Falls is just a part of the town of Lisbon.
Yes, sir. There actually used to be 3 sections, but it's Lisbon and Lisbon Falls. They divided by the river.
But the original focus of the investigation was up in the northern part of Lisbon, which is closest to Schemengees.
Correct.
And it was only later on that you decided that there was enough police presence there that you could expand the area of search, and you went back further south towards Lisbon Falls.
Yes, sir.
And that's when you spotted the vehicle.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Anything else from anyone?
Sergeant, could you tell me what the distance is between the parking lot and the recycling center where Robert Card's body was found? What distance is that?
Short distance, less than a mile, 3/4 of a mile as the crow flies.
And to get from the parking lot to that site, what path would you take? What trail would you take that would be easiest?
The walking path you could take, there's a set of train tracks there that aren't used anymore. There would be a direct line. The walking path and the tracks intersect at several points. Both lead you right behind that property.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Brian, do you think that you give him this?
You get it?
Thank you. Sergeant, that's a aerial photograph of, main recycling, which reflects where Mr. Card's body was found. Does this reflect the area where the overflow parking lot?
Yes, this is the overflow lot.
This is the overflow.
Yes.
Right, and you were positioned where?
It doesn't really show here, on the back side of the lot that faces the river. Sorry.
At the top of the photograph?
Nope, that's actually Capitol Ave that's going by there. Looks
Right,
like.
that's Capitol Avenue,
Yes.
right? And so it doesn't show the area that you were located?
Nope, I would have been in a wooded section back where the walking path and the tracks run,
Does
which would have
this
been towards the river.
photograph reflect, does the walking path go to main recycling? Does it enter in that space?
It does not enter that space. It walks by there, but that property is all fenced off.
And in what direction would the walking path be?
It would be off to looks like the bottom of the photo. It'd be out of view, obviously, but
So in the lower
Yep.
left-hand corner?
yes, well, yes. Well,
And can you estimate how far it is from the end of the walking path to this area?
$100 feet, 125 feet, somewhere in there would be an estimate.
And it was your testimony that you never entered this area. You
That's
stayed
correct.
on.
I never, yeah, that's correct.
Thank you.
Quick question. So, can you recall how illuminated this whole area was? Or was it dimly lit or not lit at all?
It's very dimly lit. It would be, there's a lot of shadowed areas.
So basically, there's a lot of blind spots and you can see. Okay.
So just, if one were to walk from the parking lot to the overflow lot, you said that lot's surrounded by a fence. So for easy entry, you'd have to walk around to some kind of, semi-public entrance area.
You could, I mean, it's a chain link fence, so if you were determined you wanted to climb over, you
You
could.
could scale it.
Yep.
How tall roughly? Just curious.
6 feet,
Oh, so not that tall.
so it's not a 12-foot stockade fence or anything, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sergeant, you mentioned that you were called away to other spots. Am I correct, or can you tell me, were these areas where possibly somebody needed to check to make sure there wasn't Mr. Card or wasn't there?
That's correct, sir.
And areas where perhaps you had received transmissions that maybe somebody was there or had been heard, that sort of thing? It seems like there was a lot of that going on at the time.
There was all of the above. There were, again, numerous complaints. People were very nervous. Obviously, we did the best we could to get somebody there. We had other agencies in town that were helping with those calls for service. And as we got information of potential locations, any ties to family, anything like that, we were working with our administration and surrounding agencies and state police to address those as quickly as possible while still covering those incoming calls for service.
I'm reading some of this, I got the impression that tips are helpful, but they also are numerous and
It's,
diverting when they
Right.
prove out to be
can be,
incorrect.
it can be.
Anything
Yeah,
further?
one quick, Sergeant, you've been in covering Lisbon Falls for quite a while. Do you ever get calls, your department get calls about people trespassing by vagrants, going in trailers or anything like that and so afloat?
I can't think of one call in the last year and a half that I've been there, other than this.
Oh, really? Okay, so, and as far as do you know those trailers are usually locked or anything like that?
The trailers?
Yeah, are they locked or they free open access?
To my knowledge, they do not lock the trailers or
Okay,
the
so they're
trucks.
all open.
Correct.
One more quick question. Did you, I think I recalled you saying that Maine Recycling was advised to close, tell their employees not to come in. Okay. And was that on the, just pretty much as quick on the 25th or?
That was on the 25th. As
Okay.
soon as information was relayed or received that was a potential place of interest, administration reached out to business owners and they were able to get that information them as quickly as possible. So.
And it's your understanding that Maine Recycling was closed?
Correct.
Yeah, okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Yeah.
So a follow-up on what you said quite a while ago. The first person you notified was your chief about discovering the vehicle. Is that right?
Dispatch, the chief was the first one that
Dispatch,
showed up
okay.
on scene. Yes.
And were you using your cruiser radio to make these notifications?
Yes, sir.
And is that something that's audible to, was it a statewide car to car or was it?
I believe it was statewide that we were on that night.
So any law enforcement officer monitoring that channel could have heard that as well.
Yes, sir.
And this is not encrypted in any way? And Chief McGhee arrived very shortly after you notified the dispatcher.
Short time.
And Lisbon has its own dispatch center
That's correct.
just for your department.
Yes,
But separate and apart from that is the Androscoggin Dispatch Center, PSAP,
correct.
which handles numerous departments, including Lewiston, Auburn, and the Sheriff's Department.
Sheriff's, ASO does not handle, they handle their department. I'll forget some of them, but Livermore out further into the county. There's a dispatch center in Auburn that covers Auburn, Lewiston, Auburn Fire, Lewiston Fire. So there's multiple agencies that work together on that.
Thank you.
Sergeant, if you had called into your dispatch at Lisbon, would your dispatch center have relayed that information to the other PSAPs or other dispatch centers?
I would say they would have, but again, I can't confirm what happened. I do know that once that information was relayed, additional resources arrived in a very short amount of time. So information was passed along at some point in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, I'm just going to show you one more photograph.
That's the road I would have been off.
On the 27th.
Right. Sure, with that might be the fence. If that's the fence line, then the trail and tracks run right there. I would have been off of this side.
Put your initials on that, please.
Just maybe approximate.
And what is this?
This is where
The fencing is.
was, where his initials are on the night of the 27th.
Trail in the fence.
He's maintaining the perimeter.
But he was maintaining the.
Outside the fence.
Yes.
Yes.
But it is the fence,
This is the fence right here.
white one.
Thanks.
Nothing further. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Call your next person.
Renee Bernard, please. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Would you state your name and your occupation, please?
Renee Bernard. I work for the Lisbon Police Department. I am a school resource officer and I've been in law enforcement 31 years.
You're a graduate of the Maine Criminal Justice Academy?
I am.
Officer Bernard, you were involved in the search for Robert Card on the evening of October 25th,
Correct.
2023. Is that correct? Were you alone or with somebody else?
As soon as I got to the police station, I was able to team up with Detective Richard Amant. And we headed out from the station together.
And could you describe for us, please, what kind of firearms equipment you had at that time?
I had my department issued, it's a 9mm 6-hour.
That's a handgun as opposed
Correct,
to a
sorry,
long gun?
handgun,
That's okay.
yes.
Calling your attention now to the activities in the town of Lisbon that evening, because we understand there was lots of other calls and responses everywhere else or in and around that area. Could you describe for us, please, your search in the areas of Lisbon Falls and the areas particularly around Capitol Avenue?
So after the vehicle was located at the boat launch, for a while, Detective Sadamon and I were on Frost Hill Avenue, kind of way out the perimeter. I don't recall the exact time. I mean, I could look at my notes, but I would say it was probably very close to 2 a.m. We had actually picked up Officer Glenn Darby, who was also with us. So we were 3 people in a car. And we went down to the area of Capitol Ave. And we were just gonna start, just kind of doing cursory searches around Capitol Avenue.
And what do you mean by a cursory search?
Well, we had the information that Robert Card had worked at Maine Recycling. So we just kind of started just a cursory search, just meaning like driving through and checking the area. When you work nights, you do a lot of business checks. So that's kind of it's all part of what we check usually during the night anyway. So we went into the overflow lot and just searched the open trailers, whatever we could see with a spotlight. We didn't really get out and open closed trailers. It was just really just looking to see if we saw anything suspicious.
Approximately how many trailers were in the overflow lot at around 2 o'clock in the morning on the 26th?
I would probably guess 30 or more.
And you had mentioned you would search the open.
Yeah,
trailers. What
so-
do you mean by that?
Detective Sadamont was driving, so as we pulled in, we just again, Sergeant Morse testified with the spotlight on the driver's side of the cruiser, just kind of lighting up as he answered the question. It's fairly dimly lit there. I think there's maybe one street light. And he was lighting things up. And then if there was an area that couldn't be seen, then we would get out and just kind of shine our light in. But again, didn't open anything, just illuminating open. Most of those trailers were open. So
Do you know how many of the trailers were closed in some manner?
I don't recall.
How long did this cursory search take?
We were probably in that parking area, maybe less than 10 minutes. I mean, it was very, very quick.
And when you just said that we would get out and look, describe that a little bit more for us. please.
Just illuminating inside the trailer if we couldn't, pulling the cruiser in if we couldn't see in, just getting out and shining a light inside. So
Which light was that? Was that a handheld light or the light that may have been
a
attached to the
handheld,
cruiser?
yeah, no, just
Like-
flashlight.
Like a mag
Yeah.
flashlight? Okay. And was it both of you? You said there was 3 people in the car.
It was, I don't honestly recall. I think it was all 3 of us that were out. I was in the back seat, so there was at one point I didn't get out, but I think that was when we were at a different business across the street.
After that time, I take it you didn't find anything
No,
at 2 o'clock in the morning on the
No.
26th.
not there, not in that lot, no.
Did you see anything in that lot that seemed to be disturbed or moved?
No, I mean, it's, you know, as I said, we check it often when we work nights. Nothing stood out to give us any indication anybody was there.
Is that lot paved or dirt?
It's a dirt lot.
And did you see any prints, footprints, tire
Nothing we were
prints?
nothing we were looking for or noted.
What was the weather like that evening?
It was fairly warm. Starting out, I would say probably by that time in the morning, I don't recall the temperature, but it was cool enough that I had short sleeve shirts on, that it was cool to be outside.
But it hadn't been raining or anything
No,
where you would
no,
see footprints or
correct.
anything in the.
Nope, it was clear
Okay,
weather.
Okay. Did you relay the results of your cursory search to
We
either
were-
your dispatch or to any of the law enforcement officers?
We did not, at that time, we met up with the chief, all of us that were working, for just kind of like a quick briefing and, I think we relayed at that time that we had searched, plus shortly after we searched that area, we searched another building where we did locate an open door. So us and other units cleared that building, and then it was shortly after that that we cleared Capitol Avenue and had that meeting with the chief.
And when you said you cleared another building, was that a main recycling building or a different company?
It's a different company,
And you found an
unrelated.
open door?
correct.
And how many officers responded to that?
Initially,
Process.
initially it was myself, Officer Darby, Detective Saint Amant, and I probably would guess, there were at least 5 or 6 other officers, probably from Lisbon, that showed up.
All right. And in front of you on the table is a large picture,
This one?
that one, yep, of the trailers. Did you inspect all the trailers down to the fence line or
No, we did not.
where did you go?
Best of my recollection, I think we came in the one entrance, which is to the right of the picture. Cut through the lot into the other kind of top part of the lot. And then, once we drove through there, we left the other exit.
Okay. You will see on that diagram a letter A.
Mhm.
Do you recall looking into that particular trailer?
I don't recall, no.
So you're not sure if you looked into that trailer or not?
I don't recall, no.
Calling your attention now to Friday, the 27th. Were you involved in further searches in this particular area on that day?
I believe in the morning when we searched main recycling. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yes.
Which buildings at Main Recycling did you search?
That was in the main building where their office is and where they do the recycling stuff. I didn't enter the building. I was on outside perimeter, so.
And that search would have been in a building across the road from the overflow parking lot. Is that correct?
Correct. It's the property that's closest to 196.
And during that search, were there any members of other law enforcement agencies besides Lisbon PD present at that search?
It was, the Androscoggin Sheriff's Department was there.
And were there any discussions about having a subsequent search of the overflow lot at that time?
Not that I recall.
Did you yourself or anyone in your department that you heard relay the information about the overflow lot to any other law enforcement agencies or the Maine State Police TAC team?
Not that I recall. I mean, not that I recall.
And was your cruiser with the three of you in it, were you operating on statewide car to car as well?
I believe we were at that point, yep.
At one point, there were discussions about a game camera on the walking path. Is that
Correct.
correct? Please
Mhm.
describe that to us.
We had had some vandalism that was occurring to a kind of a marker, ceremonial marker stone that was placed down on the walking path in the area behind Enterprise Electric, which is just to the right of the overflow lot. And I think that was Friday morning. There was just discussion that that trail cam had been put up to try to catch someone who was vandalizing. And there was discussion about getting the memory card.
And did you participate in the retrieval of
did.
that memory card? And as a result of that, was any information gathered?
I
from
don't
that
believe
camera?
so. I believe someone said that the batteries had died in the trail camera.
Do you know when the last date was that the batteries were working on that trail camera?
I don't have that information now.
And do you know who tried to figure that out?
If I had to guess, it was probably Detective Saint Amant, but
And finally, I'd like to ask you if you were involved in conversations with a custodian at the community school who said he had spotted a vehicle down
yeah,
by
on
the boat launch.
Friday afternoon, Friday evening, one of the custodians stopped me, literally, he was in traffic. And just relayed information about, he had had a trip, a team sport activity that he had driven a bus for. And he had thought maybe he had seen a vehicle parked there. I don't recall, I'd have to look at my notes to know further what he said, but
Why don't you take a minute and look
thank
at your
you.
notes, please?
So what he had reported was around, I believe it was 1840 or 6:40 PM on the 25th. He thought he had seen a pickup truck parked in the area where he thought that the Subaru had been located. And he really didn't have much more information than that, but
All right. Prior to this evening, had you had any contact with Robert Card?
I had not. No.
Were you familiar with him at all?
No.
Did you participate at all in the scene security after Mr. Card's body was found?
No, I had gone home. I was working days, so I went home probably around 7 PM that night.
I have nothing further.
Any questions from the commission?
Yes. Officer Bernard, when you were doing what you described as the cursory search, were you operating under instructions from anyone about where to do a search or how to do a search?
No, we had just started searching that area of Capitol Avenue.
Was there a general instruction from the chief to do searches, or how was it that you decided to do that search?
I think just, as I said, it's normal that we would search that area at night, and I think we just, knowing that he had been tied to that location, it was more just about going down and seeing if anything was, out of sorts or.
And there were 3 of you in the car at that point?
Correct.
Did you tell anyone else on the force that you were going to do that search at that time?
I don't recall that we did.
Okay, thank you.
Any other?
Yes. Officer, you indicated that the majority of the trailers were open and that those were the searches that you conducted. Did you determine whether the trailers that were closed were locked?
We just didn't, the information we had was that he was possibly armed with both thermal or night scopes and stuff. So we didn't spend a lot of time. We weren't properly prepared for that. We didn't spend time opening doors. So if, as I said, if the trailers were empty and open, then we were just shining our lights in there just to check, but we weren't opening trailers to search.
But could you tell when you drove by those closed trailers whether there were any padlocks or any sign?
I
of
don't
the
recall.
locking?
Yeah, I don't recall if we,
Thank you.
So the trailers that were full, were they mostly full of recyclable beverage containers and bags?
I don't recall checking one that was full. Like I said, most of them, the doors were wide open, and they were empty.
They were empty.
Mhm.
Okay. And were you in a marked vehicle?
We were in an unmarked car.
And did any one of the three of you have a long gun, a rifle?
I don't believe either of us, none of us did, no.
Are they typically kept in all the marked cruisers?
They are.
But an unmarked would not normally be involved in a confrontation requiring a long gun.
It may or may not be, but they're not mounted in the detective cars.
And was it your information from earlier in the evening that the shooter had used a long gun?
The pictures that were sent out appeared that he had a long gun.
All right, so that would put all three officers with only handguns in a pretty vulnerable situation, especially if the person had night scope or other aids. Is that right?
It's a dangerous job, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So when you, and just help me understand search, because there's 2 or 3 of you. I presume one is checking, the other one buying cover, so you're only really like 3 at a time, not 3 different directions, correct?
No, I mean, we pretty much were driving the car through. Like I said, it was a very short search. Driving the car through. If there was something that we couldn't see from the spotlight, then, you know, we were getting out and just checking.
Oh, okay, okay. And when you opened the few that did have stuff in it, you didn't go in and,
I didn't personally open a trailer,
Okay.
so I can't speak to
Okay.
that, but.
thanks.
I just have a couple of quick questions. So was there a in your own mind or in the mind of anybody that you may have spoken to about having done the cursory search, was there a plan to go specifically back to main recycling to do something more exhaustive and perhaps be better prepared?
At that time that we were there, no, not that I was aware of. When we met up with Chief McGhee, I'm not sure if it was talked about then or if it wasn't until the next morning. I don't recall.
But it was talked about at some point. We need to get back to main recycling.
Well, no, it was that the state police was gonna be
Oh, I hear you.
searching.
Gotcha. And just help me understand when you say we cleared Capitol Avenue, what does that mean, cleared?
Well, meaning we left the area of Capitol.
Oh, you
Avenue.
cleared. It's not that it was there's no, okay, so clear just means you left that area.
Right. We made it probably halfway around Capitol Ave and then we cleared to meet with the chief. So-
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sorry, so as an officer responding, you were on an open channel, so you're hearing a lot of traffic going on the radio. How were you figuring out like where things were and who's directing what? I mean, how, was there instruction given to you that, hey, this is a chain we're following, we're gonna listen to this to, or how did you figure that out?
I think it was, as, you know, Sergeant Morse testified, there were a lot of calls that were coming
Yeah.
in to search different places. So this was, like I said, it was, my rough estimate is probably around 2 AM. So a lot of that had subsided a bit. So it was just kind of, I guess, more maybe just instinctual, like, let's just start, searching.
But you weren't
places.
hearing like state police traffic, you didn't hear it?
No, they were still at the boat launch.
Okay.
So at this point, I'm in danger of flogging a dead horse, but
Okay.
you were 3 officers without a long gun in an unmarked vehicle, driving around a place where there might have been an armed assailant.
Well, we had no.
Let me finish.
Sorry.
Who had killed 18 people, who had a long gun and was said to have night vision with him. What was the purpose of this search?
Well, we had no information that he was there. I mean, he could have been anywhere, and I think it was just, like I said, just trying to just check our town and just search places. So,
Similar to the clearing of other buildings that you did.
right. I mean, we did yeah.
Okay.
Was it discussion to go back to get some more additional long guns, just in case?
No, not at that point, not at that time.
And ultimately, the search was turned over to MSP.
Well, I mean, ultimately, they were going to search main recycling, correct?
Thank you.
Nothing further. Thank you very much.
Just
officer.
one quick question. I'm sorry.
Don't be shy.
I won't be. Officer, when you were doing the cursory search, could the radio traffic that was coming in, could it be heard outside your vehicle?
I don't recall. I mean, I wear a portable, you know, so I mean, I suppose it's possible that there's radio traffic that could have been heard, but
All right, and was did you have your portable that night with you?
Yeah.
You did, okay.
I was in full uniform, so.
You were in full uniform,
Mhm.
okay, thank you very much.
So
Thank you.
just to follow
Oh.
up.
Sorry.
So the portable then is on your person?
Correct, I
So
wear a
if
shoulder
somebody-
mic.
Somebody makes a transmission, it would be audible on your person as well, or do you have an earpiece?
I don't have an earpiece now.
So they wouldn't have to be able to hear inside a closed police cruiser. They could hear any one of the officers who's outside the cruiser if there's radio traffic.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do you recall if the other two officers had portable radios on them that evening?
I believe Officer Darby was in uniform as well, so he would have had a portable. And Detective Sainmont was in plain clothes. I don't recall if he had his portable with him or not, but.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Truly.
Next.
Detective Saint Amant, please.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. Would you state your name and the number of years that you have been employed in law enforcement?
Richard Saint Amant, and I've been in law enforcement for 36 years.
And are you a graduate of the Maine Criminal Justice Academy?
I am.
Detective, I'd like to call your attention to the evening of October 25th. When the calls first came in, were you working at the time?
I was not. I was off duty.
And when did you first become involved in the search for Robert Card?
It was approximately 10 minutes before 8 o'clock in the evening is when I got contacted by Lisbon Dispatch and told about the incidents in Lewiston. I responded to the station directly, geared up in my bulletproof vest, labeled with police markings, met with Officer Bernard, and we got in my unmarked cruiser, and we were first sent to Dingley Press, which is a facility in Lisbon, for a report of a suspicious vehicle that may have been involved with the incident. Shortly after arriving, it was pretty clear that it was made known that the vehicle had been there for an extended period of time and had nothing to do with the Lewiston shootings.
Okay. So after you left the Dingley Press location, where did you go and what did you do?
Just as we were getting ready to leave the Dingley Press area, we received information from Lisbon Dispatch about a possible active shooter at the Walmart distribution center in Lewiston. I immediately started for that direction. Lieutenant Jeff Pickard was immediately behind me in his car. We made our way to the area. I, along with Officer Bernard, took up a position at Alfred Plord Parkway and Goddard Road to establish a perimeter.
Right. And establishing the perimeter, we've heard that phrase a lot today.
Yeah.
Is that part of the training that you receive at the academy or subsequent training?
Yeah, there were numerous police vehicles that were ahead of me that were proceeding to the facility directly. And at that point, I determined that it was probably good to start setting up that perimeter just in case someone was on foot and fleeing. So yes, it is part of training. And
How many police vehicles were involved in setting up the perimeter that you could see or knew of?
I was aware of 3. I believe I was the first to set up at that intersection. There was another Lisbon cruiser that set up with us, and others started a little further down Goddard Road, I think. But as far as how many, I couldn't say.
When you decided to, or when you were setting up the perimeter, did you have that as a directive from a superior, or was just a decision you made that this needed to be done?
Decision that I made.
All right. How long were you at the Walmart distribution center for?
I think we were there for maybe an hour, maybe. May have been a little short of that.
And other law enforcement officers basically cleared the building, as they say. Is that correct? And found nobody inside?
That's correct.
I
It
mean,
was, yeah, at
nothing
some point in time, it
related.
was determined that it was most likely not an incident that had occurred there. So word got spread and we started clearing that area, leaving.
Thank you.
And after you left the area
Yeah.
and it was determined that was not related to the incident, did you respond to any other reports at other businesses or facilities? that evening?
Immediately upon returning towards Lisbon, we started getting calls of suspicious conditions, open doors, noises heard. So we started handling those calls, responding to investigate.
And during that time, as you were responding to those various calls, did you ever receive a call or hear radio traffic about a white vehicle in Lisbon or Lisbon Falls area?
I don't remember exactly at what point in time it was. I know that we had the information of Mr. Card being the suspect. Had knowledge that he had residency in the town of Bowdoin, family affiliations in Topsom. I had actually heard radio traffic from I believe it was Saginaw County, that they were sending a unit, is how I understood it, to investigate a residence that he may be going to. At that time, I proceeded, along with Officer Bernard, towards that residence in Bowdoin. Shortly after we arrived in the area, it was made known that he wasn't, Mr. Card wasn't located there. So we took up a position on Route 201 and 125, just to monitor for that white vehicle.
How long were you at that monitoring location before you moved again?
It was probably, I'm gonna guess we were only there for 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, and then there was a unit from Richmond PD that showed up. Knowing that Richmond is part of Saginaw County, I figured we'd start making our way back towards Lisbon. And it was at that time that we were traveling back towards Lisbon where we heard the radio traffic that Mr. Card's vehicle, or the white vehicle, had been located at the boat launch.
So what did you do?
We proceeded to that area, took up a position again, knowing that there were already several law enforcement vehicles at the boat launch area. We took up a position on Frost Hill Avenue, probably maybe an eighth of a mile, kind of northeast of the boat launch. There's a big field area that kind of goes over towards where that walking path goes. So I figured that would be a good place to start an initial perimeter, just in case.
And during that time, the vehicle that you had, were you able to illuminate that big field area near the walking path?
Yes, I actually positioned my car so that the headlights shone out towards the field, and we have a spotlight mounted just outside the driver's door. And I used that as well.
Did you see any movement or activity in that area?
I did not.
And in that particular area, from where the Card vehicle was located, would that have been to the right or to the left? If you're looking down on the Card vehicle?
If I was looking down towards the Card vehicle with it facing towards the Sabatis River, it was towards the right of that.
All right, and the walking path continues along in that area, is that correct?
Yeah, it continues more of a north direction up to the community school.
How far away is the community school from the place where Mr. Card's vehicle was located?
If I had to rough guess, along the walking path, it's probably maybe just under a mile.
And if one were at the location where the Card vehicle was, back to where eventually Mr. Card's body was discovered,
Yeah.
what's the distance there?
Believe I checked that, and I believe it was 1.4 miles.
Okay. When you took that position in that perimeter, did you get out of your vehicle or did you stay in your vehicle?
No, I got out of the vehicle and I was actually manipulating the spotlight with my hand, panning through that field area, checking for motion.
And how long was it, or did you arrive before or after Chief McGhee arrived in the parking lot area?
My understanding was Chief McGhee was in the parking area relatively quickly after the vehicle was first called in by Sergeant Morse. I never made it to the boat launch area where the vehicle was until after we were told to clear. And that was merely a drive-by on Lisbon Street, I believe.
Could you estimate how many police vehicles were in the area of the boat launch?
When I got down by there, if I'd have to say there was at least a dozen.
And were their engines all running?
Well, when you say the boat launch area, not the parking lot or anything in the boat launch. They were on either Lisbon Street or on Frost Hill Avenue.
Okay, so,
And yes, I believe the vehicles were running.
but there were no vehicles in that parking lot where Mr. Card's car was found. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what would you estimate the distance from where Mr. Card's car was found to the police vehicles that had established the perimeter around his car?
Oh, well, at that time, it would have been probably more than 100 feet. If I can just say that in doing some research and some review of some videos to include Sergeant Morse's cruiser video to kind of find out where he was parked or stopped in the parking lot, and that of Chief McGhee's. Both of those vehicles were just about 80 feet away from Mr. Card's vehicle.
And were there any police vehicles between Sergeant Morse and Chief McGhee's car and Mr. Card's car?
Not in any of the videos that I've reviewed related to this.
Thank you. And no law enforcement officers in that area until the TAC team came?
I didn't see any law enforcement officers approach the vehicle or get any closer to.
Then where Sergeant Morse and the
That's-
chief were?
That's correct.
Okay. Excuse me. Oh, did you see or hear the New Hampshire State Police helicopter overhead?
I did.
Right, would you describe that, please? What did you hear and see?
I heard a helicopter overhead. Man, don't make me try to imitate the sound.
No,
but
I'm not asking you to do that.
The helicopter was circling overhead. It was utilizing its lights to illuminate the wooded area and the field area as well. Passed over us even a few times. And it maintained I guess it was in the area for several minutes while we were there.
And did you hear any radio transmissions between officers on the ground and the police helicopter?
I did.
Would you describe those,
And
what you
I
remember?
believe I heard Chief McGhee giving directions as far as where the walking path heads towards the community school. And I think there was communication that we actually had officers at the school and they had taken a position on the roof of the school.
And those were Lisbon police officers that were on the school roof?
I believe Lieutenant Picard was one of the officers there. I don't recall who else was with him.
Okay. After the Maine State Police TAC team arrived and you left the area of Frost Hill Avenue, where did you go and what did you do?
Myself, Officer Bernard, and other officers investigated some other suspicious sounds or subjects calls. We actually went to one called further up on Frost Hill Avenue where it was reported that two individuals with guns were outside and with flashlights outside the residence. We checked on that. We went to a residence in Lisbon Falls where there was possibly an affiliation with Mr. Card. We maintained a perimeter around that residence until the state police, I believe it was state police TAC team, came down to make contact with the occupants there. Investigated two other calls of suspicious conditions, suspicious sounds. I think it was right around 1:45 in the morning when we went back to the police department just to kind of refresh, recharge, and see if there's any new information.
And as a result of that, did you go back out on patrol?
We did.
And where did you go and what did you do?
While at the police station, I heard information from Lisbon Dispatch that Mr. Card had an affiliation with Maine Recycling. So when we did get back on the road, actually went and checked on some other officers that were in perimeter locations, see how they were doing. And then from there, I drove the cruiser down onto Capitol Avenue and started illuminating businesses and checking parking lots and things like that with the spotlight on the cruiser.
At that point, did you have an occasion to go into what has been referred to here today as the overflow lot?
Yes,
And you have that, you have two photographs in front of you from the overflow lot, is that correct? One's an aerial view, a smaller aerial view, and one's a larger one.
just trying to orient. Yes, okay.
Could you describe for us, please, you were driving the cruiser, is that
I
right?
was
Unmarked?
unmarked.
Could you describe for us, please, the route that you took through the overflow parking lot as you were checking?
On the larger picture, I entered the parking lot at the top end here.
Where the arrow is? No,
Well, it's where there's an A, I believe.
yes.
I entered off from Capitol Avenue into that section of the parking lot, using the spotlight from the car, illuminating basically underneath and between trailers, to the best of our ability, to see if there was any movement, anything that looked out of character for that particular location for that particular time of night. Proceeded along, there's the little pathway that goes down to the off to the left side of the image where there's additional trailers parked. And we made our way to the other section of the lot, continuing to illuminate underneath the trailers and between. Some of the trailers had either fully open doors or partially open doors. Actually took it upon myself to stop the car, exit, and approach some of the trailers that had the swing or bifold type doors on them, so that I could kind of crack them open to get a little bit better look inside using my flashlight. It was pretty evident that the trailers that I was approaching were relatively empty. Some of them had some pallets inside, and very minimal amount of pallets, maybe 2 or 3, something like that. And we illuminated inside, and at that point, Officer Darby kind of raised the point of tactically, given that we know Mr. Card had a long gun and military training, potential night scopes, and unknown other armaments, that tactically it probably wasn't the best for us to be searching in this manner, looking into trailers where basically your upper torso and head are made readily available almost immediately. So at that point, decided you're absolutely correct. We went back to the cruiser, left that parking area. Again, just kind of using the spotlight to illuminate under the trailers and adjacent areas. And we proceeded to the next few businesses, again, utilizing just the spotlight to illuminate those. when we got to Kelly Brothers business or building, that's, I believe the address is 54 Capitol Avenue. Did some checking of that building. A open or unsecured door was located, and at that point, we radioed the dispatch to say that we were going to be checking that. Additional units showed up to assist in that. Those included Lisbon units and units from the sheriff's department. Conducted a search of that building, interior and exterior. Found nothing out of the ordinary. Seemed like it was just an unsecured door. And immediately upon completing that search of the building, Chief McGhee radioed that all units were to clear Capitol Avenue, and state police was going to be taking over search activities there.
All right.
Well, the members of the commission have a clear view. Not here,
Yeah.
and then we'll do it on this end, and we'll do it on this end. Okay. Could you please show members of the commission where you entered? Where you
This is
stood?
where I entered the lot and drove through here, illuminating trailers here basically underneath. These, a lot of these trailers are actually backed up against the fence line and backed up towards one another. So all we're having view of is basically the front of the trailers, with the exception of some that were parked in this area where we could, I think they were actually down this way more, but we were able to look in some of the trailers that had open or partially open doors. And from there, we left the lot in this direction, coming back out onto Capitol Avenue.
So you entered here and around here. Is that correct?
Yes,
Or did you follow?
I think we followed this roadway here, and we may have looped around all of these trails and then back into this area here.
Everybody see
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
What's that in the middle? Remind me.
this? A little bit.
Do you remember what this was?
It's a like patch of woods.
Okay, so you can't, there's no line of sight here. You have to go around, okay.
Came in here, down, around and then out.
Yes.
Is that correct?
And what you, and you don't remember anything that stood out for you with AES?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm looking, right in here, I'm
Yeah.
looking at the front of
Okay,
semi trailers.
Not the
Not the-
backside? Okay. So for these trailers right in here, this would be the front that would attach to a cab as opposed to the back doors.
oh, so the back door is actually here.
Yeah, these here
Okay.
are back door to back door.
Okay,
Is what
okay,
this is.
okay.
See that?
Yes.
And could you also point out which direction the river and the path is?
The river is way down this way here. The path is between the river and the railroad tracks. Railroad tracks are between the path and the overflow lot.
And where's the main part of main recycling?
The main part of main recycling would be, this is Capitol Avenue, it would be up in this location here. There's another business and facility right here. And main recycling is actually on the back side of that building. Orientation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure, it isn't clear to people who are just listening in, but we now know that you circled around in front of the trailer where Mr. Card was eventually found.
Yes,
Yeah, and you saw the front end of the trailer.
saw the front end of
Door
that
was
trailer,
door to door with the trailer behind it.
correct.
So the door was here.
Detective, during the time you were doing this cursory search in the area you just described, did you have the cruiser's radio going with other traffic? Could you hear the other
Yes.
traffic? Okay. And do you know if other officers could monitor any radio transmissions that you had within members of your department?
Yes, I mean, they were able to, as I mentioned, when we radioed in that we found the open door at the Kelly Brothers building. Other units started responding to assist us in that search.
And you could
that
hear them
was by
calling in
radio.
and saying they were going to come in to assist?
Yes,
much space was there between the back door of the trailer where Mr. Card's body was eventually found and the trailer that was backed up to it?
At that time, I couldn't tell you. Now I've been told that it was mere 2 or 3 feet, maybe. So,
And were you able to see down in between the 2 rows of the trailers?
only
I'm gonna say
in-
the back-to-back portion, okay?
in the orientation where they were, in the path of travel that I took, I would not have had a clear line of sight between the trailer Mr. Card was located in and the one that was backed up to it.
Was there any exterior lighting or illumination in that particular area other than your cruiser spotlight and your flashlights and your headlights?
I don't recall, I believe there is a single light in that area, but it is very dimly lit.
I'd like to call your attention now to October 27th. And did you have an occasion, you were on duty, correct?
I was on duty up until I believe it was 6 PM that day, and then I went off duty.
During the course of that day, did you receive a phone call from an employee at Main Recycling Center?
Yes,
Okay, and did you return that call?
I did. Yes, I did. So-
And what did you learn?
I spoke to Mr. Martin with Main Recycling. And that was in regards to his concern for the semi-trailers that were on that overflow lot. And he specifically said that he had concern that Mr. Card might be able to access those trailers and hide amongst either the returnables or the other items that were contained within. He specifically referenced trailers that were backed up along the fence line. And that fence line would be what borders the railroad tracks and the walking path.
As a result of that call, did you relay that information to anyone?
I did. I immediately contacted my lieutenant, Jeff Picard, and I provided that same information to him, emphasizing Mr. Martin's concern that Mr. Card may be in or could have access or maybe in one of those trailers.
Prior to the 27th, had you received any information about owners or employees of Main Recycling being concerned about the potential for Mr. Card to have been present in those trailers?
Prior to the 27th, I don't recall information to that.
Were you on duty when Mr. Card's body was found by the Maine State Police?
I was not.
And were you called up again that evening?
Yes.
Tell me what you did.
When I was called, I was told that they wanted additional personnel to come in. I responded to the station, got suited up, and I went down to Capitol Avenue, and I was instructed to take up a position along what's would be referred to as our Public Works drive to prevent anybody from going beyond that point towards where Mr. Card was located.
Basically to surround the perimeter of the scene, correct?
Correct.
That they're using
Yes.
that language. On the early morning hours of the 26th, when you and your 2 coworkers were conducting the cursory search, did you relay any information about that search to other law enforcement agencies or the command center for the Maine State
I
Police?
did not.
Was there a reason why that did not occur?
It was, what we were doing was sort of roaming patrols. And it was basically looking to just to see if we could locate Mr. Card or find any evidence of where he may have gone to. There were varying reports as far as there was supposedly a blue truck and headed to Massachusetts or seen in Massachusetts, and he had access to a motorcycle and things like that. So At that point that we were doing those checks, we really had no information specific to how he left his vehicle at the boat launch. Was there a possibility of, was there another vehicle that had been staged there? And other things were commented about is, he used a boat and he's headed for the ocean. Well, that would be quite a trip, but
You had no information to indicate that he used the
We-
boat and headed for the
no.
ocean.
had no information to that or any other effect.
The walking trail that goes from where Mr. Card's vehicle was parked to both the left and to the right.
Yes.
Are there any tunnels that run in that area that you're aware of?
No tunnels. I mean, the walking path immediately proceeding from the boat launch going towards the main recycling facility. That goes under the Route 196 roadway. So there's you're going under a bridge at that point. But it's only a very small section. So,
Okay, so it's not like a long underground tunnel or?
No.
It's just going under a bridge.
correct.
And what is the composition of the walking path? Is it tarred? Is it dirt? Is it grass?
It's paved the entire way.
Other questions?
Any other questions?
Just to orient myself a little bit more, just the walking path across the Theiss River.
It does not. If you're going from the boat launch towards the elementary school, it basically parallels that river almost all the way until probably maybe 300 yards before you get to the school. Otherwise, it's right along the river.
And the community school is the same as the elementary school.
Yes,
The high school is well south of the road there in Lisbon Falls.
correct. And actually, you could take the walking path in the other direction and come out right behind the high school.
And is Frost Hill Avenue a dead end road?
It is not.
So it curls around? Does it?
Yes.
It doesn't cross the Theiss River itself, or does it?
Frost Hill Avenue does not. It intersects at Route 196, right at the boat launch, which is right at where the two rivers meet.
And you're familiar with where Schmenges is in Lewiston?
I am.
About how far from there to the Lisbon-Lewiston line, if you can estimate?
From Schmenges to the Lisbon-Lewiston line, I would guess it's probably 5.5 miles, maybe a little further.
And from your knowledge of that area, are there more or less innumerable different paths Mr. Card could have taken after leaving the restaurant?
Yeah, there are numerous paths he could have taken. Most directly would have been either is it South Ave back to Lisbon Street and then Lisbon Street directly into Lisbon, or River Road to Lewiston's Ferry Road, which then he could come down the Cotton Road and onto Lisbon's Ferry Road.
And on Lisbon Street, you can also get directly onto the turnpike.
Yes, Alfred Plord Parkway will take you right to the turnpike.
And is it possible to go many miles on the turnpike without going through an automated toll system?
So, yes, it is.
So there were, at least at the outset, before his car was discovered, there were a lot of directions the search could have been going. Is that-
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So when you showed up for, because you said you were off duty at the time, right? And you heard it and you came into,
Yeah, I was
Okay.
called in by this.
so when you came in, was there a briefing with Sid Rep to tell you, hey, this is what we got? Who's involved in the search? What has been done so far? Anything like that?
When I arrived, it was basically, there's been a mass shooting, 2 separate incidents in
Okay.
Lewiston. And that, again, I was dispatched initially to Dingley Press
Okay,
for a possibly involved vehicle.
okay, so at that point, you were not giving any, I guess, direction, for lack of a better word, in terms of where main state troopers are, where the other departments were, who's reporting to what and things like that.
Correct, yeah, at that time, it was still a very,
And was there even, to your recollection, any discussion of a search pattern to say where we're gonna start this? And I mean, I know everyone, no one
Right.
knows where it's going, but was it discussion about, hey, who's gonna cover this area? This person gonna cover this area, anything like that?
no discussion, to
And
my knowledge.
okay, and then you also mentioned that you searched this place and you didn't call in. How do you folks help mitigate redundancy? Like, you searched it, but you don't want the next crews to come in and search it, not knowing that
Right.
you did it. How do you minimize that in general?
Well, communication.
Okay,
Certainly. And right after we had left that building search where the chief had reported, that everybody out.
Yeah.
We actually had met at the intersection of Lisbon Street and
Yeah.
Capitol Avenue. And several Lisbon officers, I think there may have been a county unit there as well. And we discussed, yeah, we just did, some searching,
Okay.
again, cursory searches, but
Okay.
yes.
and I'm gonna ask you the last question, which I don't mean to be a loaded question, so I apologize if it is. So when you heard that they found Mr. Card's body in this overflow lot.
Yep.
And you folks, your team had just did a cursory search, the day before.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind? Do you remember, like, do you think, like, because you didn't even know what trailer they found him at that time, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
you had no idea this was one area you passed by or not passed by, correct? I mean, you had no idea where he was found.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, all I was told is that he was in a trailer in the overflow lot and,
Okay.
yeah, I don't know
And-
which one.
Other people were aware of this overflow lot?
I can only speak, I know
Yeah, for you,
Lisbon
yeah.
officers, are very aware that the trailers in that lot are associated with main recycling
Okay.
center.
Okay.
So,
All right, thanks.
Anything further?
I have a couple of questions, Dan, thank you. Did you have any plans after your cursory search to go back to main recycling and do another search?
it probably would have depended on, us, meeting with other units to discuss what we had already conducted for searches and things like that. Again, at that point, when we were doing that search, we really had no information as far as the direction of travel or anything like that. It was basically my reason for going down there was just to possibly investigate the association that he had with the main recycling facility. Just to go down there, because knowing that the path leads directly from the boat launch where his vehicle was located comes, directly behind that overflow lot. It was just, certainly that it was well within the realm of possibility that he had gone that route.
So what additional information would you have needed to go back and do a more thorough search?
Well, anything that would have said, like a K-9 had maybe started a track in that direction and had lost it, that certainly would have given us indication that, okay, we need to really concentrate our efforts in that area a little bit more, just based upon that clue.
Are you aware of whether any canines were used that evening?
I'm not aware if there was any K-9s.
But in any event,
Yeah.
when you left the area, you received information from Chief McGhee that the Maine State Police were taking over?
That was the radio traffic that I heard was to leave Capitol Avenue area because state police was going to be coming in to conduct additional searches.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Detective.
Thank you. Chief McGhee?
Yeah, hang on just a second. We have a call for a quick break.
Yes.
Quick meaning 5 minutes? Not hearing any objection, 5 minutes.
Good afternoon. Could you state your name and your occupation, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Ryan McGhee. I'm the Chief of Police of the Lisbon Police Department.
How long have you been chief in Lisbon?
This will fall be 4 years.
And prior to that, did you have law enforcement experience? And if so, where?
I've worked for the Lisbon Police Department for just over 22 years. I worked for a year for Mechanic Falls Police Department.
I'm sorry, what was the last thing?
I worked for 1 year at Mechanic Falls Police Department prior to coming to Lisbon Police Department.
And you're a graduate of the Maine Criminal Justice Academy?
Yes, ma'am.
Chief, I'd like to call your attention to the evening of October 25th. When the mass shootings were first reported in Lewiston, were you on duty?
I was not.
I take it you came into work.
I did.
Before we get into the actual details itself, during the evening of the 25th into the 26th and then the 27th, was the statewide car-to-car the only common radio channel for all officers to hear communications going back and forth regarding this search?
No, it was not.
Okay.
Oh, regarding the search? Yes. State police is primarily what we use. I asked my dispatch to use the Lisbon channel if it's for Lisbon complaints, because we were fielding other complaints as well. But there were both channels being used, which we can all monitor both on our radios.
And do you know if your officers could also monitor Lewiston PD, the sheriff's office, or you said you could already monitor the state police transmissions, is that correct?
That's correct. The March cruisers in Lisbon all have radios that can monitor Lewiston and Auburn. The unmarked cruiser, actually, I believe at the time, there's 2 vehicles. They weren't marked vehicles. Those radios weren't replaced yet. Lewiston and Auburn have encrypted channels now, so we had to buy new radios with encryption. We put those primarily in our marked cruisers first, so the officers on the road could always monitor Lewiston and Auburn if something was to happen.
And do your cruiser, in the marked cruisers, do they have the ability to also monitor the sheriff's department?
Yes, they do, ma'am.
Are you aware of whether or not the sheriff's department radios could monitor yours or the state police channels, the marked cruisers with the sheriff's department?
Yes, we work with the sheriff's department a lot.
And do you know if they can hear the state police channels as well?
I don't think there's an agency in the state that doesn't have statewide car-to-car. Every agency uses that to contact the Interscon County Jail or Cumberland County Jail or any jail when we're bringing a prisoner to jail. That is the primary radio that we use to be able to communicate. It's also something that's used if we're working with other agencies or involved in a chase. It's something we know that we all can go to statewide car-to-car to utilize.
And is the statewide car-to-car radio channel available to members of the general public who have a scanner, as we used to call them when I was a kid?
I'm sure anybody with that number can monitor it. Yep.
Was there a lot of traffic going on the statewide car-to-car the night of the shooting and into the early morning hours?
Well, during those 2 days, there was probably a lot of radio traffic, and I can't say for sure exactly how much radio traffic there was. I know that night, starting off, when my officers first called me, advising that there's an active shooter and they were responding to Schmeggies for people that have been shot. I know that I could hear it in my officer's voice, and we didn't hear that over our channel. And the officer responded, and I knew at that moment we had an emergency, and I said, I'm coming in and we're going to activate our department. It was something serious that went on, and my officers made it to Schmeggies in Lewiston, and I had a sergeant provide a watch cover with a rifle, and my other officer loaded a victim into the backseat of a Lisbon cruiser and transported him to the hospital, ultimately saved his life. So that evening, because I found tonight, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna try to go through it a little bit because it gets a little bit choppy, and me myself being there, it was getting kind of confusing. But stop me at any time because I'm here as your guest. But that night, we left. I told dispatch to call the units in. Very important to get as many officers in as possible. And as I'm coming into town, I'm passing our Lisbon Main Street, and this is important to know because we have Flux Restaurant that's open. Everybody knows Flux Restaurant. Frank's Restaurant, All Pit Brewery, Railroad Diner, Rusty Lantern, McDonald's Restaurant. And I say that because there's people everywhere in my Lisbon Falls as I'm coming to town, and I have no description of a suspect. I have no vehicle description. I have two of my officers, the only two on duty, left my town and went to Lewiston to do anything they could to assist. Excuse me. So with that being said, when I got into work, as soon as I got there, there was numerous officers coming in, very little information at that point because it just occurred. I then took, there was somebody that came in, a member of the fire department that has medical training, and he came with me. My lieutenant was there. I asked my lieutenant to get officers in cruisers. I don't want a single person in a cruiser. I want everybody doubled up or tripled up. And at that point, it was flooding our area, but also sending as many units to Lewiston to assist our neighboring agency. So this occurred, and I decided I'm going to head back to Lisbon Falls real quick because we don't know where this person is, and there was just two major incidents, something the state's never seen. So immediately went around to all those restaurants telling them they need to close. They need to go home. They need to shut the lights off. There's been a mass shooting in Lewiston. And not one business owner said, boo. They all, I know them. I mean, I've worked in this community for years. They shut the doors. They shut the lights off. Some of the restaurants said they were just starting to hear reports of it. And I asked them to please go home, and they listened. They went straight home. As soon as I believe the last place I was getting to was McDonald's when I heard come over the radio of active shooter at Lewiston Distribution Center in Lewiston. For those of you that know that area, that is a gigantic building.
That's the Walmart Center.
The Walmart Distribution Center. So myself and all my officers started talking on the radio. Okay, you take this road. I'm going to take this road, because we wanted to flood the area in different directions in case something came at us that was going too fast, because we still didn't have a vehicle description to try to just see anything suspicious that were responding there. As I was arriving, I was met by numerous officers from numerous agencies, from warden services, state police, to counties from far away. I mean, there was a lot of people showing up. And when I say a lot of people, there was a lot of police officers in that area. I was quickly met by a Lewiston supervisor. I don't remember his name. At that point, let's all go to statewide car to car. He's like, absolutely. We started putting it over our channels. Everybody goes statewide car to car. It was brought to my attention. I don't remember who told me, but someone said we were just near Walmart Distribution Center. But as soon as I stopped, someone said multiple officers just breached the front door of Walmart Distribution Center. They went inside looking for the suspect. We already had two other major shootings that I know of. So multiple officers just started talking amongst each other, and a perimeter was quickly put around the distribution center. I mean, there were state police, wardens, Lewiston, I mean, Auburn, there was everybody that was there. And they did a great job. All the officers that went in, the Lewiston officers and multiple other agencies and the sheriff's department, they did an outstanding job. They went in there and as quickly as they could determined it was not a threat. There was not an active shooter there. It was wrong information. But we didn't know that at the time. So at that point, it was asked that units head over to the Coliseum in Lewiston. The Lewiston officers, I don't know, I believe maybe all the officers go to Coliseum. I asked my officers to head back to town. I know that Topsom and Saginaw had backfilled into my town when we all went into Lewiston, but we went back to my town and I asked officers over the radio, let's start checking our streets and, just basically looking for anything suspicious. As we're coming back into town, we get a report of a male in lingerie at the Dormer Motel acting suspicious. We have units go to that. We have a call for Amelie's dance studio of shots fired possibly at the dance studio. We respond to that. Multiple agencies, not just mine. Topsom, Saginaw, I believe the sheriff's department, myself. At the same time, we get a report of another gunshot in Winter Park. We respond to that. This is all coming pretty quickly. Once that clears up, there was another call on Cotton Road. I believe Detective Amant and maybe even Officer Bernard handled. And at that point, we then continue to search the area. Deputy Barr, our Deputy Sheriff, Androscoggin Sheriff's Office, had sent me a photograph of the suspect from the surveillance video during this time frame, which I then sent out a mass text message to my officers showing that this is the suspect. So we now had a picture of the suspect, and that was before the name, because there were some other names that were tossed around at first. So at that point, we get a A little while later, we get a report of a white vehicle, Subaru, in gross development. Gross development is off of 196. It's between Schmeggy's and it's between the boat ramp. It's probably dead center. A white Subaru. I didn't know at that moment there was a white Subaru, but apparently it had come out that there was a white Subaru that had just come out, and I didn't know that. I mean, it just came out, and it happened to be that because everything was live on the news. And obviously we're not watching live on the news as well, but they're getting, live updates. So myself, Sergeant Morse with his partner, it was me and my cruiser, we converged the area. They said they pulled up to a stop sign, they stopped and were there for a few moments, enough for it was odd and suspicious, and they called us. Multiple other officers came to the area. We started checking that area, looking for the white Subaru. We didn't play, but we had a white Subaru. Was now the vehicle we're looking for. We leave that area and the director was basically look everywhere for it. I know that there was some radio traffic about Bowdoin, and I did know that Detective Amant was headed to Bowdoin. I can't remember if we talked to him on the phone or what. At that point, it was very briefly after I left the gross development. Sergeant Morse had left first. Maybe within the next 5-10 minutes, Sergeant Morse radioed that he had a vehicle that he believed matched the description at the Spanish River Bridge boat ramp. To explain the Spanish River Bridge boat ramp, if the best way to explain it is if this road is 196, this is the best way to explain it. So this is 196. It's a straight road. And off of that straight road, you have another road that goes this way, and that's Frost Lab. So if you can picture an L. If you come off 196 and you turn, this area right here would be the parking lot. Sorry to do it this way, but it's the only way. So this area where the white paper is would be the parking lot. The car was located in the farthest part of the parking lot. It's just so you can see as well. So this is where the car was. This is 196. And then I'm just going to draw it here because it's just easier. Because I really want everybody to completely understand. This is all important stuff. So you have 196. This is another entrance that comes in right here. And then this whole area in the middle, it's all parking lot. Okay. Sergeant Morse comes in, he stops his cruiser. Right to the next of his driver's side seat is that tunnel, as you referred to, that goes underneath 196. Essentially right next to him. On the other side of it, I was the second officer to arrive. I pull in and I'm right here in my cruiser, and I do not pull into the parking lot. I'm directly behind the car, but it's far enough that I can't see the car. I can't read the plate with my eyes. I got pretty good eyesight. Couldn't read it. Directly next to me, I had Lucas Sherlin, a canine officer from Thompson Police Department. He had showed up directly next to my cruiser, directly to my passenger side. He showed up. We opened up our cars. We have him in a tactical position in case we get into a gunfight with him. Officer Brianna Kinney pulls in behind me. She's behind my cruiser. We have suspect's vehicle way off on the right side of the parking lot. I got my sergeant here, and I'm here. I asked Lucas Sherlin, I told him in my glove box, I got binoculars, see if you can get the plate. He read the plate off as I was providing cover for him. I relayed that to dispatch, and then it was confirmed over the radio for everybody here that this was a suspect vehicle. As this was happening, it was shortly after that. It didn't feel like long at all. The helicopter came over. I didn't know what helicopter it was, but I knew it was a police helicopter because they came over the air that they were in the area. I'm like, it's got to be statewide because I heard them, but I was also scanning. I radioed the helicopter and I explained to them the position of the car. I explained to them, I remember telling them that there's a walking trail that heads north and south, one direction towards the school, and I don't recall exactly how I explained the other direction, but I did explain that there's a trail. But I was also concerned because an officer had commented that it looked like he had a night vision scope on his rifle in the picture. And I am right next to the woods and all my officers that are showing up. And when I say there's a lot of officers that show up, you couldn't park a car between all the officers on 196 and Frost Lab. There was a ton, and I was the first officer there as people were showing up afterwards. As we're there, I asked the helicopter to check the woods with their infrared, next to our cruisers in the wooded area. We had a kind of like a pie formation with our cruisers, but we didn't know, we had no indication of where he was, none whatsoever. I also want to point out the reason why we never went into the parking lot was I've worked along canines my entire career. Majority of my shifts, I'd say 17 years of my career were nights, working same shifts as our canine officers. I'm a previous, the chief of Brunswick used to be my sergeant. He was a canine officer. We worked most shifts together. You don't want to spoil the scene, the scent of the scene. We didn't go into the parking lot. That's a reason for it. I have a canine officer that's next to me. And the reason why we didn't utilize the canine, because it was pretty quick that state police came over the radio, because they were monitoring the radio as well, not to enter or approach the vehicle and that they were en route. And I know it's very common when the state police TAC team, because they do have the gear, they do have the tactical gear, they do have the advanced training that I don't have and my department doesn't have. The tactical training, that is. So when they showed up, they relieved the officers, anybody that was a non-tactical team member were asked to move from that location. I don't remember exactly what point of it, but it was somewhere around that area. We were setting up road blocks on 196 in different locations. When we were clearing from that location, and I don't recall exactly when we learned the information, but I know it was before I went to the 2:00 a.m. briefing Thursday morning, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, there was a briefing in Lewiston up at the command post, which at that time I believe was at Lewiston PD. There's sometime before that where and it was right after I left the boat ramp, but I had radio dispatch and requested that they have Public Works respond to the Lisbon Police Department to meet up with Lisbon police officers, and we were going to have them escorted to Public Works. Unfortunately, our Public Works Department was on Capitol Ave, where Mr. Card was found, not far from it. But we escorted our employees to Public Works Department, loaded up the barricades, and at that point, I had reached out to my lieutenant asking or explaining where we wanted the roadblocks. And we had roadblocks as far away as Frank's, which is at Main Street, 196, and Canal Street. Further up, we had them at Route 9 at the high school, Frost Hill Ave, Upland Road, Big Loop, Mill Street, by the old Graziano's, where there used to be a Graziano's restaurant. We had roadblocks there. We didn't want anybody from the public coming anywhere near that. And that was done by reaching out to the lieutenant. And I know the lieutenant would call the officers individually or whichever cars. I've been instructed him to relay that information forward. At some point during this, we learned information that there was, that Robert Card was associated with Main Recycling. As the other officers explained, it is about a mile or so from the boat ramp. To me, it seems pretty logical that it would go somewhere to that area. Why this is all going on, we have the roadblocks that are going to be established, and that was through phone calls. I also had information that came in. I can't remember it was said over the radio or what, but Springworks Farm, which is between west back towards Lewiston. So Robert Card's vehicle, it's probably not even a quarter a mile from his vehicle. There's one employee working in the building at Springworks Farm, and they call and explain that they heard a bang inside the building. And when they went to go start checking the building, they found that the bathroom door was locked. And it was explained to us that you can only lock that bathroom door from the inside. So having that information, I immediately relayed that to the state police. And I was in contact with Greg Roy continuously throughout this entire incident. Sergeant Roy runs the TAC team, and he has a vested interest in Lisbon. That's where he grew up. I've known him for years, and I would reach out to him and relay this information. They were, I believe, at that time, somewhat finishing up the scene at the boat ramp. We then responded up to, I was already there, and I was there with 2 members of my department, because we had other members taking up roadblocks at different locations in Lisbon Falls. So we had numerous sheriff's department members show up as well at Springworks Farm, very large area. So we're trying to put a perimeter, hold the perimeter on the building. The employee had skedaddled out of there. He was scared, got in his car and left. I was on the phone with the owner who I've worked with in the past. And they were working on bringing up their security cameras to see if we could quickly determine whether he was inside the building or not, plus trying to get floor plans. That way I could give them to Sergeant Roy with the state police so they could do their tactical plans moving forward. State police shows up with their tactical team. And as we know, they went through the building. Mr. Card wasn't there, but that obviously took up some time.
I'm going to stop you for a
Yeah,
quick
no
second. On that evening in the early morning hours, when you said you were in constant contact with Sergeant Roy, did you relay any information about the connection between Mr. Card and Main Recycling as his former employer?
Yes, there's definitely that night at some point because there was plans on Thursday to go. There was a lot of other things going on as well, which I'll get to. But yes, we did have that conversation. Actually, I think I had it with more than just him because when I was up at the command post later on, it was known that he had previously worked at Main Recycling. But there was other information as well. Right now, we still had zero information that he went to Main Recycling. We didn't know where he went, but we weren't taking any chances. We were trying to investigate all avenues. So we check the Springworks farm, get that all cleared. And then at some point, I'm just referring to my notes for I get my table correct. At some point during that evening, the state police had information that they were going to check a residence of a possible ex-girlfriend of the suspect on Center Street in Lisbon Falls. And that was relayed to me. Sergeant Greg Roy called me and explained, hey, Chief, we're going to head down to this position. I'm like, okay. And I grabbed some units that were available. We went down to that location as well. As this was going on, we also got further information because tips are pouring in now. We also got information. So, and the reason why I bring all this up is because it's so important for everybody to know the totality of everything that's going on. It wasn't as clear cut as here's the trailers, here's Main Recycling, here's the boat ramp. And the public and everybody I want to make sure I explain it thoroughly because it's important that everybody knows. And that's why we're all here today. And I appreciate having the chance to be able to speak. So during that, there was also information, the state police TAC team were clearing that location on Center Street. There was also a location of property owned by the Card family on Perillo Street. That's in Houston Park in Lisbon Falls. And we had a perimeter set up around that house as well. Myself, Sheriff's Department, I believe there might have been some state police there as well. The state police TAC team came, they ordered the occupants out of the house because they wouldn't answer their phone. Ended up meeting and speaking with them. He wasn't there. And at that point, we cleared from that residence. I then turned it over to Lieutenant Pickard, said just keep checking, have the officers keep checking through, the area with businesses. We had everybody, at least 2 or 3 officers. I heard before about, handguns and rifles, and we don't have enough rifles in Lisbon. We will, but we don't. We have 1 rifle, 1 long gun in every single marked cruiser, and which is perfect when you have every cruiser on the road. It's not perfect when you call in your entire police department, because another thing that happened was we didn't have enough rifle plate vests. We didn't have enough ballistic helmets. We didn't have all the gear that we needed. And I've already taken steps forward working with my local town manager to make sure that we have those items. That way we have them, but we take an oath to protect the community, and myself included. I gave my rifle to 2 officers to use. I keep a rifle in my car. But we take an oath and we were doing everything we could. The officers that testified earlier, they were doing everything we could to bring justice to what happened to those 18 people that lost their lives. So backtrack real quick. So it was about right around 2 a.m. I was advised there was going to be a briefing up at Lewiston Police Department. I went up to the Lewiston Police Department, met with several other chiefs, as well as the state police. There was some talk about the command post. It was going to be set up. I remember exact location now because I made the decision, since I have several friends that are chiefs of police. Sometimes you can have too many chiefs and not enough. I don't want to say the verbiage, but sometimes you can have too many chiefs and not enough people doing the work. Workers, exactly. And I felt it important where I have those strong connections with other law enforcement leaders. And any updates could be given to me while I'm in the field to be able to be with my officers and assist with calls, because I also know there was a lot of calls that were coming in. And I guess I felt wrong if I wasn't there with them to assist them. So went up there, again, I spoke to Sergeant Roy and I talked to him again about the main recycling. There was talks about doing something during daylight hours. And then at that point, I went back to town. And it was probably, it was 6:43 in the morning. We got a call of 395 Lisbon Street. Caller heard someone in the woods behind her house. So 395 Lisbon Street is literally just up the road from where his car was found. So we had gone to that area. Several officers had gone to that area. It was clearly deer when we showed up. I could see deer prints exactly where the pine tree was. It wasn't anything, but at that point we had national media attention, and something that I've never experienced in Lisbon, Maine. And we had them going into people's yards and following the officers. There was a whole broad spectrum of something I haven't seen before. And the calls continued to pour in after that. At 8:14 that morning, we had multiple gunshots on East Ave. Overwhelming response from multiple officers responding to that location. At 8:38 a.m., numerous officers responded to Mill Street on 196 in Lisbon because they could hear people yelling and screaming. The caller was very concerned with dispatch that something was going on. We headed to that location. We live in Maine. It turned out to be goats. They were screaming, but it brought up the sense from the homeowner, my goats don't do that unless something's going on. So we then decided, okay, let's check the barns. So we were climbing up in the barns, climbing up in the attic of the barns, searching that. As that's going on, the neighbor across the street comes out. Can you please check my garage? My wife and I are stressed. Can you check our garage? You know, the door was left open. We're checking that. At the same moment, another neighbor says, can you please check our boiler room? The doors, you know, and this continued to happen. We continue to get concerned residents. And I'll be the first to admit, I didn't document all these calls by calling dispatch because I really didn't want to tie up any radio traffic. You know, hindsight 2020, I will make sure that every single last call is documented. And we have electronic ways that I'm looking at doing that as well. So we're not tying up any radio ways. But this continued with multiple calls. We still had our officers at those points where I put them the previous night. We had officers go home. And then the way the lieutenant and I decided to do it was to have shift debriefs when we were bringing one shift in and then telling the other shift to go home with any updates. But there wasn't a ton of new knowledge. The state police, there was no issues. Like, I continued to talk to the state police. Sergeant Roy had assured me that Thursday, they were putting plans together Thursday to do more detailed grid searches of that area from the boat ramp. And they did. And I don't need to go through all these other calls that we handled to tie up time.
We've sort of got the message about.
So I'll jump forward. Sorry, be long-winded. You just ask my guys.
In the interest of time.
No, I understand.
I think it is important that people understand everybody was flooded with calls and
Yeah.
tips, and many of them
Red
were
herrings.
red herrings.
Yes.
Yeah.
To which you were responding with handguns and a few long guns. And just real quick, your long guns as compared to Mr. Card's, you knew what he was armed with at that.
Yeah, he was armed with a 7.62 rifle, which is the same as a .308 hunting round, and that would go clear through the front of my vest and out the back of my vest. It would not stop it.
Were your long guns similar to that or not?
No, and I think most law enforcement agencies have a 223 5.56 millimeter. It's a smaller caliber bullet, but we do have AR-15s or M4s in all of our March cruisers, and that's what we are. That's what. And my lieutenant and I actually had these talks of making sure that we had officers doubled up with long guns. And then talks actually went forward as well with District 2 Chief. I spoke to the District 2 Chief they were great. District 2, Southern Maine Chiefs of Police. I didn't want to inundate our chiefs in this area because they were already there. I mean, the chief of Jay Police Department was at the boat ramp that night. I mean, they responded from all over the place. So I had conversations at one point, and a large list of law enforcement agencies were going to be moving to our area, like realistically starting, we ended up finding Card's body, so that didn't happen. But we were gonna double up our officers with officers from outside agencies and take outside agencies as well and infiltrate anywhere in our town where we needed those outside agencies. So we were making those steps to have even more people come in. But back to Thursday, Thursday was, they were doing, the TAC teams were doing searches from the boat ramp area. And later on that day, they did search Main Recycling, the main lot at Main Recycling. And just to be clear, that when I spoke to Sergeant Roy, I explained the Main Recycling facility. I didn't specifically state the overflow lot because I don't actually believe it's even just, I think it's overflow for the industrial park, I believe. But there's a lot at Main Recycling, because when I spoke to him, he said that total they have 165 trailers that they have, but they also have a whole bunch of trailers around their main building. So Thursday, it wasn't the Maine State Police TAC team. It was a different tactical team, and I'm not quite sure which tactical team it was. I think it was like Southern Maine Tactical Team. But I was contacted and advised that the State Police TAC team were coming down to search the Main Recycling Center. And we still held our perimeters. And then as they were coming up out of there, I noticed, because I was behind the ball courts, the Lisbon High School, and there's a field that goes down to a concession stand, and next to it was a picnic table. And I remember seeing a sweatshirt down on the table. So I pointed that out to the TAC team guys. They were leaving, asked them if they could go investigate that. And so that occurred. And then I had more conversations with Sergeant Roy from the State Police. We continued to handle more calls. It was, and they were doing searches in the woods throughout the day. Thursday, I don't know the exact locations where they were. Then Friday, I was called early Friday morning. Meantime, I didn't leave. I stayed there because didn't want to miss any information. And, laid that down that night for a couple hours and then helped with some calls. But Friday morning, I was advised that they were going to be doing searches in the water. They were also going to be doing more detailed grid searches, starting from the boat ramp, going different directions. But before that happened, that night, Thursday night and Friday, actually it was Friday morning, in the early morning hours of Friday morning, we had a officer going through Capitol Ave and locate multiple officers in a cruiser had driven through Capitol Ave. But they had noticed a tractor trailer truck with the seat forward in the Main Recycling parking lot. This is an officer that's worked nights for years. Like, normally they don't have the seat forward. So that prompted a response by me calling multiple officers and the sheriff's office to go down, let's check Main Recycling. Again, even though it had been checked already. Thursday by the TAC team, we went down there, we checked the trucks, the trailers at the main facility. And then I located a door that was not locked. So I reached out to State Police, advised them. They said it's possible that it just wasn't relocked after they left. And I said, I have multiple, I probably had 40 plus officers there, if not more. He said, if you feel comfortable with your officers, you can clear it, find anything, just back out and hold the perimeter. So that's what we did. We put 2 teams together. We came up with a plan and we cleared that building. We went in 2 different locations and cleared the building and did not locate the subject inside. And we just left from that and continued to handle calls that day. We had large media presence Friday during the day. And at some point Friday afternoon is when the information was relayed to me from Lieutenant Pickard that he spoke to Detective Amant. He explained that there was somebody from Main Recycling, I believe it was the supervisor, had explained that in their lot, there's an overflow lot. He's like, I know that you might have checked your main building trailers, but your overflow lot, we have trailers that have stuff in them as well. And it was explained to me that plastic or aluminum and everything's in these trailers. And even if they got checked, someone could have climbed up in over the material, turned around, and then pushed it back up and been hiding in one of these trailers. So as soon as I got that information, I immediately called the command post, gave that information to them. They were great. And I also asked them, I'm like, do you think since US Customs and Border Patrol is involved, if we can get X-ray scanners and scan these tractor trailer trucks down here, figuring that'd probably be the safest way. We had some conversations back and forth, I believe phone calls back and forth. We also looked into seeing maybe we'll dump out every tractor trailer truck. Maybe that might be the best way. We'll just dump them out because we're trying to figure out a safe way to search the inside of these trailers. Ultimately, they weren't able to get anything from anybody to scan them. And the state police, and my hat's off to the state police, these guys, they're heroic guys. I mean, it's very dangerous to search the back of a box. When you open the door, you're completely visible. There's no way to protect yourself. But I ended up speaking to Sergeant Roy. He said, we're sending teams down there. We're going to manually search all the trailers. And that's what they did. They came down there and they started searching trailers. We had another debrief with all my officers of the department at shift change. And, we explained that, well, there was more conversation actually with Sergeant Roy than that, just that. We also had conversation that starting 9 o'clock Saturday morning, they're going to move the command post, tactical command post to the Lisbon High School because they're going to concentrate a heavy response around that whole area in the industrial park. So we were planning on that for 9 o'clock that following morning. If that didn't pan out to be anything in the trailers, because realistically, the helicopters never picked up anything. I believe at one point they casted a dog. I wasn't there. I just heard about it after a fact and didn't pick up anything. We knew that, he was in the military. I have a lot of family that are in the military, and I know they get a lot of training. So that was always in the back of our mind, like how much training did he get to evade us? We just didn't have all. We wish we had a crystal ball and we could have not even had this happen to begin with. But ultimately, I'm extremely proud of our agency, the Sheriff's Department. Lewiston PD was there. They had a huge team of officers come down helping our officers the following day after this incident. And I know that their whole department witnessed absolute horror because a couple of my officers did, but their whole department did.
Chief, in the interest of
Sorry.
time, we have 2 more people and I want to make sure they have time to speak as well.
I got you. Thank you.
But it was you can wrap up if you are able to do it in a.
Okay, I'll just leave it with this, that I'd like to thank you for having my officers and myself here today, because I think it's important that we are transparent and we do communicate the whole time during the incident. That's what all my officers and myself and other agencies and the commissioner and everybody was saying. If you see something, say something. And I think moving forward, that's what we need to do as a community as a whole. So thank you.
Chief, just one question. When you went to the command post at 2 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, I understand you saw Sergeant Roy there.
Wait, say it again.
When you went to the command post, Lewiston PD at 2
Yes.
o'clock in the morning, you saw Sergeant Roy?
I saw our, Sergeant Greg Roy was back there. Lieutenant Keaton was there. Detective Sergeant Farley was there. Chief Stewart from Brunswick.
Sorry,
Oh, sorry.
I think you sort of predicted my question, which
Okay.
was who were the more senior state police officers who were there besides Sergeant Roy, if you recall?
The most senior one that I'm familiar with was Lieutenant Keaton, because unfortunately we had a horrific incident that happened in our town earlier that month. So
Okay, so a lieutenant was the most senior one you were familiar with.
that I was familiar. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
So, Chief says this most senior person, did they brief you quickly in the IC structure, who was in charge and who's doing what sections and stuff like that? Was that information relayed to you when you arrived?
2 o'clock.
Yeah.
When I arrived at 2 o'clock, it was Detective Sergeant Farley. It was going over some information about Mr. Card, but there wasn't a lot of new information. There was
Okay.
information that I had already known.
Okay. And then the other question is, your department has probably participated in other drills or training with mass casualty involving multi-agencies. In hindsight, comparing what's different and how do you think that played out in real life, in real time versus what you guys practice?
We've done numerous active shooter trainings, and we always do all our trainings inside a building. And it's to get to the threat as quick as possible. I mean, look at Lewiston PD. They were there in under 90 seconds. That's unheard of. You can get there as quick as you can, but if someone commits an act of violence in that short amount of time, makes it difficult. And that's hard for law enforcement officers because we want to protect people. But what's different is, and we've had meetings at the police department with our command staff level of talking equipment needs, how we're gonna do things better in the future, because we always need to improve, you know. Unfortunately, not every situation absolutely goes perfect how you want it. The best avenue is prevention. But yes, we're gonna further change how we do active shooter drills
And I
to
think
include the
you
outside.
highlighted that the difference with this event versus other events is that they end usually pretty quickly or get resolved on site. Whereas this lasted days because you had to do the search and whatever, which is very different from other events.
Correct, doctor. You know, you look at this situation, and I'll be brief, I promise. But if you look at this situation, this individual, the autopsy showed 8 to 12 hours before they found him. He killed himself 8 to 12 hours before. That means 36 to 40 hours, as long as my math's correct. But 36 to 40 hours, this individual was alive in somewhere. Sergeant Rory told me there's no indication that he was in that trailer a long time. There's no, you know, like there's no indication. We don't know to this day whether he was there when my officers went through or if he snuck in there because he just fled from main recycle and that's why we found an open door. We don't know those questions. Obviously, we would love to be able to answer and we don't have video cameras to show, but that was a long time for someone to be alive. And I ultimately think 36 to 40 hours, that individual being alive, he didn't kill himself right off. I think it's because of all the work of the people sitting behind me and all the other agencies is the reason why he was contained to an area and couldn't do any more carnage to our communities. And my hat's off to every agency.
I think you touched on a point which we tend to explore further, and I'm not sure that we know all the answers yet
Yes.
as to when this occurred, so let's not go down. that
Yeah, I
today.
understand.
This time of the afternoon, we'll explore that.
But I do thank you for your time.
I just have a couple of questions. You indicated that Thompson PD had a
Yes.
K-9
Yep.
at the boat launch when you were there.
Yes.
On the evening of the 25th or early morning hours of 26th. Did you have any discussions with that officer about the use of the K-9 at that time?
No, because it was pretty quick that state police were en route to the scene. And when the state police show up at the scene, the scene's turned over to them and the state police TAC team have their own K-9 unit assigned to their TAC team.
And do you know if they used it?
I don't know the exact details of that.
As of the time you left the boat launch, there were no cars in the lot near the car.
There was 100% zero vehicles inside the parking lot at any time I was there.
And did you leave before the
Except the
TAC team
suspect.
arrived?
No, I didn't leave until they showed up.
So as of their.
No one else left until they showed up because we didn't want to just flee because we couldn't see inside the vehicle. We had our spotlights on it from 2 different angles and we couldn't see if he was hunkered down or in that vehicle. It was a very uneasy feeling. I mean, we just didn't know. So
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
Chief, while that lot was in the control of the Lisbon Police Department, no one went near the car.
not at one
No
time.
vehicle, no person, no dog.
Nope,
Okay,
none.
great.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Call your next person.
Lieutenant Theiss? Good afternoon, Lieutenant. Lieutenant, we've heard a lot of testimony this afternoon about actions, about searches, about efforts made by law enforcement. What I would like to zero in with you is the initial establishment of a incident command system or taking control of the scenes in Lewiston. Okay?
At the scenes themselves?
At the scenes themselves.
Okay.
Could you please describe what happened in Lewiston at the scenes themselves? I'm not concerned with the Walmart incident or that other restaurant that was called in where there was a false report or an unsubstantiated report, but at the scenes themselves, what steps were taken to secure those scenes and or to provide help and services to the persons who had been shot or injured or were present at the scenes themselves?
Right. Well, naturally, we had, the initial call came in for just-in-time recreation. So we had sent all available officers up there. you know, on a typical night, we have 7 patrol officers and 2 supervisors. That evening, we were fortunate enough to have an additional 4 foot patrol officers as well as 2, an on-call detective. Another officer was working a detail at a soccer game. Then we had actually 14 officers that were at firearms training that night. So we had 29, I think it was in total. So when the initial call came in, I had sent obviously the whole watch to just in time. And then obviously within 12 minutes later, we had sent, the call came into Schmeggee's Bar and Grill. So it was kind of, you know, we're fortunate to have those guys at the firearms range, which was maybe a half a mile from Schmeggee's, to reroute themselves because they were actually en route to just in time when the other call came in and rerouted to the other location. So I'd actually had 2 supervisors that I had contacted, Lieutenant Carly Conley, and I had overall command since I was the watch commander that night. And I had designated her to be the on-scene commander at just in time. And then my road supervisor that night was Sergeant Joey Brown, which I labeled him as the on-scene commander at Schmeggee's.
And how quickly were those individuals designated as the on-scene commanders?
I would say by 7:30, it was tough to get radio traffic in, and I actually tried to use my phone, and actually the phone's cell phone, because of the usage, I'm sure once word got out, was it was difficult to get through to that too. So I would say by 7:30 that night.
Okay. So is it fair to say that communications via cell phone were difficult, much like people encountered after 9/11?
Absolutely.
And did you have any assistance from other agencies as far as trying to become command?
Yeah,
Or
I
is
had, well, once the initial call came in and I went to, you know, I realized the situation we were in, I had called the dispatch center to have notify Auburn and Androscoggin, because I'm aware once Androscoggin puts the word out, they have a system where it goes out region-wide to have all additional units respond. So I called Lieutenant Randy Keaton from the Major Crimes Unit from the State Police. I'd called Chris Peavy, the supervisor from the FBI, to have all available. This was all before 7:30 to have all available resources they could come in to Lewiston. So by, you know, before 8 o'clock, there was multiple agencies that had poured into Lewiston PD, department heads, chiefs.
So just so it's very clear, the first call for just in time came in at 4 minutes before 7.
Correct.
And then the second call for Schmegmees came in at 8 minutes.
12
at-
minutes later, it was
12
7.
minutes
yeah,
later,
correct.
okay. And by 7:30, 34 minutes, you had commands team set up
Established.
and established, and you had already made calls to the FBI area agencies, to your chief and others. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And during that time, is it fair to say you also had officers who responded and actually transported victims to the hospital from the 2 different locations?
It was actually Schmeggee's, because I knew once the first call came into just in time, you know, they had dispatched all rescue units and fire personnel to just in time. So I had officers that responded in their own vehicles from the range to Schmeggee's. Realizing that, you know, we were depleted, at least the area was, you know, there were other area rescue vehicles coming from outside of Lewiston, but that was taking time, and, you know, the severity of the injuries and what went on down at Schmeggee's, the guys were just triaging them and loading them to their vehicles or whatever cruisers were there and transporting them themselves.
And when did the state police get notified?
I notified Lieutenant Randy Keaton, it was prior to 7:30. I could probably give you the exact time if that helps. You got it documented here. 7:08, correct. Thank you. Yeah. It was right after the second active shooter scene was called in.
And when did Lewiston Police turn over incident command to the Maine State Police?
I mean, obviously it was chaotic because, you know, and, you know, we talked about, you know, I knew I had the two scenes at just in time. And, you know, I think it was before 8 o'clock. There was another active shooter call came in at Da Vinci's and then the Walmart. So, you know, knowing I had two, in my mind, I had four until we disproved it. So, I would say once all the law enforcement agencies started pouring into Lewiston, realizing we obviously, you know, we couldn't house them in our building. So I called the school department who gave us the high school to kind of get things moving up there. I think it was 3 o'clock in the morning, Thursday morning, when we finally said, okay, this is the command post up here. So I would say that would be the official time that we, you know, turn things over to the state police.
Officially, but you were working with them between 7:30 and
Correct, correct.
3 a.m. If your report indicates that at 11:24, you called the superintendent to get the use of the high school, does that sound
Yes.
correct to you?
Correct.
And the command center remained at Lewiston High School for the duration of this
Correct.
event, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And at some point, you turned over your watch command to another police officer from Lewiston, is that right?
That's correct.
What time was that?
That was, I think it was probably at somewhere around 4 in the morning, Thursday morning. Because I was actually, I was actually working overtime. I'm actually in charge of criminal investigations. So I was unfortunately working overtime that night. So the way our shifts work, the 7 to 3, 3 to 11. So I was working the 3 to 11 shift, and then the morning watch supervisor came in 11 o'clock, you know, till 7. So I figured I'd turn everything over to him, you know, go home, freshen up, and then assume my watch criminal investigation commander hat after that to get that portion of the investigation rolling.
That's basically what I was asking for Lieutenant Theiss for the information on setting up the command center. Other questions?
Any other questions?
Just, there was a picture immediately posted of Robert Card at one of the shooting scenes, and it looks like it against a background of little lockers like in a bowling alley. Do you know if that was from Just in Time?
That was from Just in Time because my Lieutenant Conley was the on-scene commander there. That was the first shooting. So naturally we were trying to get out information as to who the shooter was. So I said if she could dive into those the surveillance videos from inside, which she did. And then once she got that video.
Sorry, who got the surveillance videos?
Lieutenant Conley.
Conley?
Lieutenant Carly Conley, yeah.
Okay.
And then once she got a picture, she sent it to me. And like I said, we talked about some of the command structure at the Lewiston Police Department with other departments that rolling in. So she emailed it to me, or actually it may have been on my phone. And then I had given it to Chief Deputy Billy Gagney from the Sheriff's Office, who put that on social media. And I think within a few hours, I was very short, maybe within an hour, we're getting phone calls as to who that was.
All right. And as far as turning this over to the state police, there have been homicides in Lewiston during your tenure there, correct?
Yes,
And by law, the state police have exclusive jurisdiction over investigations of all homicide except in Bangor and Portland. Is
that's
that right?
correct.
So it wasn't that they just came in to take over because they're the big agency.
Correct.
By
That's-
law, they have to take.
By law, it's standard. Yeah, correct.
I'm done, yeah.
Just real quickly, how long, I mean, your department's response time was very quick. And there was a very brief duration between the mass shootings, but how long did it take for you guys to clear the scene so that your officers could move about just in time and Schmenge's deal with the, you know, injured, the wounded, the deceased, where you could do it with confidence that he was not hiding somewhere or?
Well, I'm not sure that we ever established that. I mean, I think until we found him in the trailers, or that the state police found him in the trailers, you know, there was no borders, you know, like to where it contained, and we couldn't say, well, he was definitively here. Yeah, sure, they found his car here and there, but
I'm sorry, but I guess my question is, when did you know he was no longer at Schmenge's? That, you know, when, by the time your officers arrived at Schmenge's, how long
Right.
before they knew, okay, we don't know where he is, but we know he's not here?
I would probably say, I know that if I can back up, I know it just in time because the owner had told the officers that he had left. So the other issue, we weren't sure. So I would say that they, you know, they went in immediately, cleared the building. If that call came in and at 7:08, I would say by 7:15 at the latest, we knew he wasn't in the building.
Okay, so quick.
Yeah.
Thank you.
First, kudos to your department for dealing with what you had to do, you know, men and women. I mean, it just had a tough, you know, I mean, it's hard to believe what they had to endure, so my hat's off to them.
Thank you.
Since the two sites were so close to each other in terms of time wise, were you thinking there was two shooters at the time, or did you even just think there was one to look for?
At the time,
Or you didn't know?
I just didn't know. I mean, this is something that it's unprecedented.
Yeah.
In my, you know,
So in your planning or whatever going through your head, you had to assume that there could be multiple shooters.
correct.
All right. And in terms of the time when you set up a command post roughly around 7:30 to 3:00 in the morning when we went to the school, how did you try to manage all the different departments coming in? Because there are many people coming from very far away and stuff. I mean, that's a lot.
It was difficult. It was, I relied, I think, a lot on other agencies to contact us.
Uh-huh.
And because I mean, the place was flooded with law enforcement and rescue
Okay.
personnel. So I did the best I could. I had a lot of department heads come to Lewiston, and I kind of gauged it by that. But as far as I knew, there was a lot of law enforcement out there, but it was
And
impossible.
one last question is, you working in the state police and turn it officially over around 3-ish. Was the federal folks, FBI, everyone there before that, or you had no interaction? How?
No, I called Special Agent Chris Peavy
Okay.
from the FBI. He's a supervisor
Yeah.
down in Portland, and he was probably, I would say he was in Lewiston. I'm not sure exact time he got there. It was within the hour
Okay.
of the second shooting.
So was this significant assets from FBI right there by let's say 10:00, or just him?
Yeah, it was him, and when I initially spoke to him after the Schmeggy shooting, I had asked him to pull in all his available resources to Lewiston.
Thank you.
Lieutenant, one of the concerns that we've heard is from members of the deaf community who felt that there were some problems with communication from law enforcement officers to both the people who were there and also the people who were trying to get information about their family members or friends who were part of the cornhole
Sure.
player at Schmenge's. Does your department have regular interactions with or access to ASL interpreters?
We do. We actually have some, I think we have a sergeant that's actually, and maybe the chief can answer that question more than I could, but there's some resources out there that if, you know, we do come to a situation like that, we can rely on to call.
When you received the call from Schmenge's or at any time, did any of your officers indicate that there were members of the deaf community who were part of the Schmenge's victims?
No, I wasn't aware of that until much later.
Okay, thank you.
One last question. Sorry. What interaction you had with the hospital? Because obviously you're transporting a large number of victims to the hospital. And at the same time, you know, I think you're trying to set a perimeter around the hospital as well too.
That's correct.
And then you also had to deal with all the influx of press and families. And how did you try to I guess, manage the scene? You know, did you just assign someone to manage the scene, or what did you do?
Well, yeah, it was initially, and I can say that my concern within that first half hour, because you know, keep in mind, I thought I had 4 scenes,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I had the 2 that I knew of. So my concern was getting the word out to shelter in place and to lock the city down, so that I had contacted the city administrator O'Malley roughly 7:45 to get the order out through social media. Once we had locked down the scene or we'd secured the scenes at the bowling alley and Schmeggy's, we knew the other two weren't real. And I slowly had law enforcement officers coming back into Lewiston, so they were able to take scene security, trying to direct that. And then I had, other officers were coming in that I had called in. I had said, well, listen, I need you to go, who's not getting the word to, the businesses, people were walking on shelter in place, get these people locked down if they hadn't heard, but word was circling. Then I had to, of course, provide scene security for the hospitals. We were getting the witnesses over to the armory, stuff like that we had to secure those scenes. So again, there was the cooperation that we got from the other made it easier that we had such a, what can I do? So I was more or less dispatching a lot of those people out to those scene securities as well as trying to.
Was it you who decided they need to have security, or the hospital says I need a perimeter set up for me?
It wasn't me. I think it was maybe like it could have been somebody else, maybe the hospital.
Okay.
But wasn't me.
Anything further? Not, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
And you may call your next.
Last but not least.
Last but not
Chief St.
least.
Pierre.
Thank you and good afternoon. My name is Chief David St. Pierre. I'm a police officer for Lewiston I'm a chief of police, but I've been an officer for 31 and a half years with Lewiston and 10 months prior to that with the York County Sheriff's Department as a reserve deputy.
Chief, you've heard a lot of testimony here today as to the initial response, and what we would like to zero in on with you, sir, is the information. When Lewiston PD first got the call, and then the establishment of the incident command system and just trying to manage what was going on. Can you tell me your view of what happened in that first hour to hour and a half?
Sure. I was off duty, obviously, but I got a call from Lieutenant Theiss, who was the watch commander. I knew he was the watch commander. He called me while I was visiting for family. I took the call as I always do. It happens quite frequently that I get a call just as a heads up, if nothing more, of something that's going on, whether it be a violent crash or a sexual assault or something of significance. So I answered the phone and got the call that he believed that there is a active shooter that just was reported, and as we spoke, it became more evident. So he called me early on. It became more evident that this was in fact factual, that it was happening, because he was telling me how he got a couple more calls. There's 2 calls, there's 3 calls. So this is happening. So I immediately hung up, got in my cruiser and went to my home, which is about a mile away from where I was. Outfitted myself with a vest, a gun, and started heading towards the station, really to assist Lieutenant Theiss. For something in my head, I guess it's, being a police officer, I kind of wanted to go to the scene and see if I could help there. At which time I realized I'm probably not going to be much help with a sidearm, a vest, and a badge swinging from my neck, basically. What I did is try to clear out Legends, which is another establishment that was next to Just in Time, as there's still people milling about, smoking cigarettes, conversing outside. Told them to either get inside or leave the area. And I don't know exactly what point, but I heard over the radio that there was another event, which happened to be 12 minutes later. So I started heading to the station, realizing Lieutenant Theiss was probably by himself and could probably use a little bit of administrative assistance at the station.
Right. Could you describe to the commission, please, the number of officers that weren't with Lewiston PD, but who showed up at your agency within that first hour to hour and a half in Lewiston?
Certainly, there was so many people that responded. It was heartwarming, very much appreciated. They came in quick and fast, and in short, it was very chaotic. I'm not going to say it wasn't. It was trying to establish the command post right away. Our police department, though it's the second largest police department in the state of Maine, it's not huge. You have a watch commander's office that's downstairs on the main level, and a larger classroom, which we immediately set up to start putting people in there. I was told that obviously that the state police, major crimes unit had been called and they were en route. As soon as they got there, they were set up upstairs. I mean, I saw members of every department showing up to help, our court officer, you know, just anybody that you can imagine that could lend a hand in any which way, shape or form was there to help us. The warden service, I can't even start to name it, but there were so many police officers. I'm gonna guess that, you know, just that one night, the first night, there was probably upwards of 300 to 400 police officers from around, New England, really, that responded.
The decision was made to move the command center to Lewiston High School. Is that correct?
That's correct. That was later on in the evening. You know, for quite some time, we did host that at our police department in our upstairs classroom.
Right. And when that decision was made, how large an area did the command center have at Lewiston High School?
I think the area was fantastic. It was very sufficient for the number of officers we had. Actually, there was probably more officers than we had space, but it's a huge area. They gave us the whole wing of the building, which encompassed the lunch area that all the students commonly eat lunch in every day, with another secondary area with all of the classrooms attached in a certain wing, so we could have a lot of room to set up.
There were reports that indicate that officers at one point were told to gather at the Colisee. Is that correct?
Yeah, there was a very short period of time that was mentioned. I think it was early on. We were just running out of space quickly. I mean, we had TAC team members set up on our rooftop as security. But yes, that is correct. At some point, we did set up something there. I think that was perhaps at the urging of a fire chief. I think maybe it was Auburn Fire that helped try to get that together.
Try to get the crowds out of the Lewiston Police Department building,
I'm sorry?
trying to get the numbers down in the Lewiston Police
Yeah,
Department
it was
building?
getting a little bit hectic and chaotic in our department. I mean, we really only have a couple restrooms. We don't have sufficient food or, you know, avenues to bring other people in that could help.
Who made the decision to bring persons who had been at either of these scenes to the armory?
I'm not certain. I don't have that information. Who made that decision to bring the victims? I mean, excuse me, the witnesses?
The
there?
witnesses to the armory.
I'm not certain.
All right. And is there anyone, you've heard Justice Gorman talk about members of the deaf community who had been at the cornhole tournament. Is there anybody in your agency who is familiar with ALS?
ASL. yeah.
ASL, I'm sorry.
We like Lieutenant Theiss mentioned, we do have one sergeant who's rather proficient in it, though I don't believe she's certified. So we don't use her, well, for an investigation that would call for a certified interpreter. But like Lieutenant Theiss explained, I didn't know that there was members of the deaf community that were involved at all until really a couple days later.
You all had iPads for interpretive stuff, is that right?
VRI.
What is it called?
VRI.
I'm not sure. I think we do, and it's really a internet-based program that, you know, virtually anybody can use. But again, I wasn't aware that there was even members of the deaf community that were involved.
Sure.
Chief, do you know who set up the security perimeter or who was in charge of the security perimeter around the armory that first evening?
I'm not sure. The state police took charge pretty quick and pretty much early on. There was discussions amongst all of us, you know, who's got the hospital, who's got the armory, who has the Lewiston Police Department, various locations. The hospitals were a main concern because there were victims that were also transported there. And the armory was a concern because there were witnesses that were being shuttled over there. So I'm not sure who had command of that. I would assume it was the Maine State Police that sent people over there or ensured that there were people in coverage there.
And later on in that evening and into the early morning hours, a location was set up that, lack of a better phrase, was the reunification center. Do you know who set that up?
I do not.
When did you turn over the, or when did Lewiston PD turn over the incident command to the Maine State Police?
I'm gonna say it was probably right around 8 o'clock when the state police really started showing up in numbers, 8:30 in that vicinity, they took over. I remained kind of a conduit. Lieutenant Keaton was my main go-to. The Commissioner of Public Safety, Mike Shostak, was somebody that I went to on a regular basis, as the chief of police. Detective Sergeant Chris Farley was a big go-to for me if I needed information or had heard more information, or if they had any questions as it surrounded Lewiston or any resources that I could provide.
That's questions I have for this chief.
Who were the senior state police officers who were present in Lewiston that early part of the evening and after midnight?
Sure. Early on, I would say for the most part, it was Lieutenant Randall Keaton as well as Sergeant Chris Farley. Bill Ross, who's the colonel of the state police, was there for a lot of it throughout, especially when we moved the command post down to Lewiston High School.
So that would have been early the next morning.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. I left around 4:30 in the morning and with the intention of coming back about 7:30 for another debrief.
And at some point, did you have a conversation with a family member of Robert Card?
I did not personally, no, sir.
Did not. Did somebody communicate that to you?
I did hear that while we were at the police station, while we were trying to identify when we were sending out the photograph that Lieutenant Theiss mentioned the sheriff's department sending out for us. I think it was Sergeant Mike Whalen who manned the desk for a little bit. I'm quite certain he got a call from a family member of Mr. Card. That information made its way right upstairs very quickly and then became the focal point or the focus of the investigation.
Well, my colleagues may correct me on this, but I thought you were identified in one of the state police affidavits as the source of that information.
I don't believe so, unless I'm the one that ran upstairs and told him or was part of the conversation, but I know it was Sergeant Whalen that received the phone call. I don't know if it was from a brother or the mother. I'm not even certain of that, but I know it was a family member who positively identified Robert Card as being the suspect.
Thank you.
Wait, just a second, Dan. You, Deborah?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
You're all good.
Was any discussion, and again, I don't know how early, if any, about how to notify families of deceased and injured? Was there any discussion behind the scenes with the between your department, state police, anyone?
I did not have any, but I'm quite certain it must have taken part. Every investigation that involves an unfortunate death of any kind, where a notification is necessary, we have those protocols in effect, and we practice them on almost on a daily basis.
So could it, and again, this is me asking this now, I even say, so would it be something that, hey, state police dictate how, this is how we're going to do it, and the Lewiston police will be informed, that's a process, and when we go do it?
We would do it mostly with them. As stated earlier, that when there is a homicide or a suspicious death, the Maine State Police take the lead on it in Lewiston. We would often, whatever it takes to help them, all of our detectives always get assigned assigned from a state police detective to accompany them or assist them. It's directed by the Maine State Police, basically. Can you go out and make these notifications?
One of the challenges with mass shootings often is that urgency for families to will ask, is my loved one, one of the victims? And that's always a lot of pressure on all the responding agencies. I wasn't sure that was kind of discussed at all. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything further?
Just so Lieutenant Theiss spoke about FBI sort of resources, and this is really for your own edification. So when MSP is in charge and FBI resources are there, FBI takes their lead from MSP, vice versa. How does that work?
Sometimes it's a little bit tricky as to who actually has the jurisdiction. I mean, FBI obviously has, by their name, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So they have jurisdiction in all of the United States, where the Maine State Police's jurisdiction is in Maine, solely in Maine. So In these cases, usually it is the Maine State Police that would take it, or usually that's a homicide that might involve one, maybe two people. But this is an unprecedented event where we had the unfortunate results of 18 people that died as a result of this tragedy. So I know there was some discussions and maybe it possibly got even a little bit uneasy as to who's going to handle everything, but the Maine State Police generally took the lead on everything.
Your observation was that MSP sort of maintained
Correct.
overall
Yes.
incident command. Thank you
You're welcome.
Anything further?
Thank you to you and your officers.
very
Thank you.
much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Want to thank a couple of folks. I want to thank all of you for showing up, and based on everything that I've read and heard, and we've been had an opportunity to look at, the response of police agencies generally was very responsive. And the ones that were present at the time of the shooting did what I've learned is called going for the gun rather than waiting around. And it was really well handled in this situation. So you folks can be commended for your response time, which was incredible, and your ability to march toward the source of the danger. So thank you very much. Before we leave, I also want to thank the ASL interpreter. I noticed that she got left. She's the last one. So if we'd gone on till 6 o'clock, it was going to be a long evening for her. So,
And this is Meryl True, who should get a call out.
so that concludes the day's hearings, and we appreciate very much your attendance. And you probably learned something that I learned long ago. You can never trust attorneys to say, I only have one or two more questions. It afflicts all of us. I have one or two more questions, and then it goes on. So you've heard that in court, I'm sure. Yeah.
Not just attorneys.
No,
Forget.
yeah, no. It's
I plead guilty, but you know.
I think it's everybody.
The shrinks are pretty chatty too.
Usually,
Thank you very much.
very much.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And seconded, all in favor, said aye, and we adjourn for the day.
Thank you for your service.